You're listening to the Cinema Snarks podcast. I'm Larry,
No, I'm Ren.
and today we are going to tell you how we really feel about the Academy Awards Best Picture nominees. Plus, we're going to throw in our thoughts on the actual winners of the show for good measure. You know how we do.
Right.
So we're back. It's been a little while. We thought, you know what, we should probably return at some point to do a show. Why not the
Especially the Best
Oscars?
Picture show. If I'm gonna
Yeah.
sit through 10 fucking movies
Long.
and make sure I watch them, I'm at least gonna record a podcast about what I thought about them.
Multiple very long films, one of which over 3 hours long film.
And it's the worst one.
Oh, well, spoiler alert, I
Throwing
guess,
it out there right now.
as we get into our list. So, since this is coming out post Oscars in a post Academy Award world, we thought we would share our thoughts on the winners as we go throughout this, or share our thoughts on the fact that about half of these Best Picture nominees didn't win a single award.
Got nothing.
Zero, shut out. And we'll bring in our thoughts
let's
on
be
the other
real.
ones.
It was kind of boring. There's nothing really to be like mad about. There weren't a lot of like shockers.
I know that you're not quite as immersed in all the Oscar discussion on like film Twitter and getting all the odds and stuff as we near the award ceremony. But this actually was such on paper should have been a pretty unpredictable race. Like most of these awards by odds betting, or if you looked at the precursors, which were the BAFTAs and the SAG Awards and the Golden Globes, they were all actually quite divided. But it kind of all settled where we more or less thought it would. Like Best Actress was a toss-up heading in. Actor was a toss-up. Supporting actress could have still fallen any which way. That one was still the big one. But there were very few legitimate surprises come Oscar night, which if you were a fan of the film that swept through the evening, was great having no surprise. It was a fun time for many of us, but maybe not so fun for other folks. Also,
Great for me.
kind of
I
a
actually didn't
spoiler
watch.
alert at what's coming up at the top of our lists, but we'll get there when we get there. If you're watching, it's kind of a spoiler on what's sitting right next to me.
Yes, we're not going to spend a bunch of time talking about it because we already did a whole episode about
we're
it.
just going to talk about how great it is. All right, so I figure we'll just kind of bounce back and forth, and as we go through, obviously we'll have less and less to talk about because we'll probably be chiming in as the other one speaks about their choices. Ren, do you want to kick us off? Since you already gave us a nice little hint, what is your number 10 on your Best Picture ranking?
Was Avatar: The Way of the Water. It was like
The Way of Water, Ren. There's
Way
no
of
extra
Water.
the.
Sorry, The Way of
God.
Water.
James Cameron spent a lot of time coming up with that title, Ren. You will respect it.
I have a lot of thoughts about Avatar: Way of Water. I think one of my big thing is where are we drawing the line between an animated film and a live action film that we get to put into the Best Picture category? Because Avatar: The Way of Water is an animated film. Like there's nothing about that film that sits in reality. Like I think there's more live action in Who Framed Roger Rabbit than was in The Way of Water. It's all green screen, and if not green screen, they're all computer generated. So I think that's a very interesting question of when are we going to draw that line between like what counts as CGI animation, right? I want to go back to like The Lion King when they did the live action version, which is just an animated version. Those are not real lions.
And that one is.
So, anyways,
I was gonna say Disney has really been skirting this line for a while, whether it be The Jungle Book, whether it be The Lion King.
And you know what, Disney, you can play with what counts as animation. You're Disney. That's fine. You've got a history with it. Whatever. But Oscars people who decide on this criteria, that's what I want to know. So so I think the animation aspect of it was just like questionable. It was beautiful. It was very pretty. I believe it won Best Special Effects.
Yes, it was the winner for Best Visual Effects.
Great. I think that's appropriate. I think that feels fair. I mean, at the same time, again, it's like How often do we give best special effects to an animated film? Because Kubo and the Two String probably should have won it the year that it was up for. If we're talking about
It
animation,
did get
anyway,
nominated, but it did not win
it
its
did not win. It
category.
should have. If we're so, but anyways, it was very pretty. I brought my baby, and she was very interested in lots of the stuff that was happening. Did not like the explosion bits, but she liked lots of the pretty water stuff.
Okay.
It's definitely one of those movies that like it should be a show, but it probably would have been a pretty boring show. It was very long. Just it was like two different movies. And they had to do so much, I think, to catch you up on the last movie that was out like 10 years ago. Spent a lot of time trying to catch you up, and also still like I wasn't 100%. I didn't watch the original Avatar right before, and so I was a little bit lost for a good
Okay.
portion of it. It took a while to like pick up on, okay, this is what's going on and this is what's happening. All right.
Yeah.
I don't think it was bad. I do think it was weird that it got nominated for Best Picture. I think if that movie had been directed by anybody but James Cameron, it wouldn't have gotten a nomination for Best Picture. It would have just been like, oh,
Yeah.
whatever. And yeah, it was just long and formulaic, and there was nothing original about it. It was fine. I get why it made billions of dollars.
It's
Makes
now the
sense.
third highest grossing film of all time.
Right. I mean, like, let's talk about inflation, but still,
Yes.
I get, I can see also where like internationally, it's easy to sell all the
Yes.
way around. But all of the Avatar characters are clearly coded as like natives. And it's okay. I don't think that James Cameron is obligated to cast everything with people of color, but I do think he should probably have a few more than he had in his very all white cast
Yeah.
of voice actors. Like it doesn't even like can't even be attributed to aesthetics. You might as well expand your horizons
Yeah.
and try and get some new people in there.
There's literally the argument. There's no good argument, right? This is one of those
Yeah,
cases like star power. That's not what's bringing people to
no,
see Avatar. They don't care who
yeah,
plays these characters. They don't really, really don't. It's acting talent. Come on. I mean, once again, you can fix a lot of the faults in the acting in post.
yeah,
So there's really no good argument for there to be none. Like, one here, one there, kind of in the background. Zoe Saldana is kind of the blanket. They're like, we have Zoe, we're covered. Oh,
yeah.
no, not really.
No, no,
She's
I don't
not
think so.
native. So, really, you're still not addressing the group that you're taking the culture of, but, whatever. Cool, I guess.
Yeah, I don't have like a big. I'm not one of the people who would be like agreeing with people on Twitter who are like really angry about it because they're aliens. It's all kind of, but just at a baseline, like ignore, take away all the rest of it. It's just like let's be a little bit. Let's look at the proportional population of the world, of the
If
United States,
there's
even.
and that's I guess there's just something to be said about that. In a film like this, again, where all those factors people like to argue are taken away, this is the type of film that we should be progressing a lot
Yeah,
more. Like a more conscious director who is so conscious about the world, obviously environmentalism is a huge thing to James Cameron. I mean, he's a very much like save the world, save the environment person. Obviously, that's what these Avatar movies are all about. But for him to be so blind on the racial aspects of that is just disappointing, to say the least. We have a
agreed.
door that should be opened easily in like this arena, and it's just not at all. So
Yeah.
I think that's the big problem.
I just like, other than that, I mean, I like enjoyed it generally. It's too long for how predictable the whole thing is, for every beat knowing exactly how it's going to go. And that's why James Cameron's movies are popular, right? They deal with family and everybody can get behind that. They deal with the environment, which is something we should care about and get behind that. We even nowadays we can totally get behind like colonialism equals
Mhm.
bad, right? Like maybe not like 100 years ago or even maybe 50 years ago,
No.
but now we're all like, yep, we can agree with this theme, right? There's a vengeance and all of that. It's all stuff that people can like identify with. It's
Yes.
very, very common and repetitive, and that's why it's great for a wide audience. But I don't think Avatar does anything innovative to elevate it to the point of let's nominate it for a fucking Oscar. Best picture.
Best
Again,
picture.
I think absolutely appropriate that it won for the best visual effects. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I can't argue with that.
No,
Great.
none of us can. The most of us were like, "Yep, hand it to that. That's
So,
good."
what was your bottom choice, Larry?
So my number 10 is The Fablemans.
Mm.
I don't know, I didn't really like it. I thought it was very overindulgent across the board. It's kind of like that meme, like men would rather put their mom on blast in a film like this, like make a whole production out of it instead of just go to therapy. That's kind of what Steven Spielberg did here. Made a whole damn movie about like processing, his mom cheating on his dad.
And his
um,
dad, who is the Mary Sue, as a male Mary Sue. Like there is nothing. His father is a perfect, wonderful man. Even the mother who cheats on him, he's perfect and he's wonderful. And
Perfect.
I don't know what's wrong with
It's
me.
very weird. But you talked about Avatar feeling like two movies. This definitely felt like two movies smashed together into
Yeah.
one. We had the film and the wonder of film, and then you have this really weird family drama. Like, and
Yeah.
I think he tries to put them together, and it did not
Yeah.
mesh well to me. I thought it was an art in overacting.
Yeah.
I thought everybody across the board was overacting, except maybe Paul Dano. He was fine. He was probably the best to me in the film. But
Still a little bit of that like actor intensity behind the
yeah,
whole thing, right?
I know
There's
people
no
loved
subtlety.
Gabriel, the main character, but I really thought he was hamming it up.
I liked him,
He
but
was
he's
fine.
very young and
And then Michelle Williams, I really thought was overacting a lot in this movie. So I really don't get her Oscar nomination in Best Lead. Personally, I was quite shocked, regardless of the fact that she's very clearly a supporting role here. But,
yeah. I
uh,
think there is this idea that Michelle Williams is a very good actress, which I generally agree with. So it feels like she should have delivered a great performance here in a role of a conflicted mother and
yes.
and
But
but
uh, for my book, she did the better Marilyn than the one we got nominated this year. I think she was
mm,
better in my week with Marilyn than Ana de Armas, but that's just me.
I'm still voting for Marilyn and Norma Jean. That's always going to be my top. Samira Servino and Ashley Judd.
But it just, I mean, it's beautiful as it's Steven Spielberg
Yeah.
film.
I think I would have liked
It's
it a lot
well done.
better if it was just the falling in love with the film, if that was more of the focus.
Me
Um,
too.
like I
Me
wanted
too.
more of that, like, oh, how did you make the gunshots happen? Oh, I poked it. Like that to me is
That was
interesting.
fun. Yeah,
And
like the cinematography, like how he created
and
special
him with
effects.
his friends. Oh my god, I love the moment where he's directing his friend. He's like giving him the information that this guy needs to like feel the moment as an actor. Like those were all really
Those were
fun,
it.
and I think
Yeah.
it would have been weird. Strangely enough, it would have been a better movie if it was a movie about movies. And I complain about those all the
Me
time. Getting
too.
like, it's not that I don't like them. I love them. I'm a movie nerd.
But if
I
someone's
don't
gonna
like
do it, Steven Spielberg, like if someone's gonna give us a
Steven.
movie about movies, Steven Spielberg is the director to give us a movie about movies. And it just sucks that he blended it in with this weird kind of personal, and that's the thing with me, is it's a personal story to him, but it all just felt so inauthentic that it felt
Yeah.
like at arm's length almost. Like, I don't know, I feel
Uh-huh.
like I didn't it didn't feel personal to me. It felt contrived. It felt almost soap opera-ish. Like,
I think I told you on the phone that like, I had a baby, so my hormones are just like they're jacked forever now. So I cry at like everything,
did you cry
and
in
I didn't
Avatar?
cry at the Fablemans. So that's how you know how like it didn't really affect me. Right, I would have preferred, honestly, I would have preferred an autobiography that wasn't like I want to know more about Steven Spielberg once he gets into the field of movies, right? Like,
Yeah.
fuck all that other shit. Like, I love the uncle who shows up and is like, you're always going to be a slave to this like desire to
Yeah.
make art, right? Obviously, I get that. I love all that stuff. I love all of the up. Like, if we just would have cut out so much of that mother family drama.
And even the like Jewish stuff, like I get what he was trying to, depict, what he had to overcome maybe as like a
Yeah,
Jewish man. But it all just came across so weird with this over the top girlfriend, this over the top Christian girlfriend, which could have been fun and funny. But again, it just felt like soap opera. Like it just felt so ingenuine to me. That whole thing about like, I made you a star in my like little high school
It,
senior
yeah,
class picture. None of that, I don't know. None of it rang
all of
true
that
to me.
might have
None of it.
fit better if the whole movie was just focused on this movie making angle as
Yeah.
opposed to the family drama kind of it should have been one or the other, but it ended up being all mooshed together in one,
Actually, and then
which
yeah, and then if you closed it on the same note we closed it on, because that was the best part of the whole film to me, when he goes in with that like meeting and he tells
yeah,
him like putting it on the horizon is boring. Like you have to
yeah,
like that's great. And even the
yeah,
little nod at the very end where he frames it, center
ships it.
horizon and he shifts it up. Great. I was like,
Love that
see,
little nod.
if more of this had been in the movie, I would have loved it. I would have like
Yeah,
really bought in. But
yes,
as it was, I didn't like the
yeah.
Fablemans.
My 10 was Avatar: The Way of Water. My number 9 was The Fablemans.
Okay, so we're
My
good.
number 8 was Top Gun Maverick, which it's similar to Avatar: The Way of Water. I really enjoyed Top Gun. I thought it was super fun to see in the movie theater. I thought that it was superior to the original, that it had a plot with some real
Every way.
stakes that made it way more interesting to actually watch. Like they had a goal at the end. There was no real goal in Top Gun. It was like, oh, I want to be the best. That's like, not that great of a goal.
But that
And
horrible,
so
like non-genuine love story. Yeah, no.
yeah, there was like a mission. I think it did a great job of knowing what made Top Gun, the original, like good, and then updating it and repeating it. Like I think the moment I realized that it was they knew their tone perfectly was when they had the beach football scene, and it's like, oh yeah, they got it. They know
The
what's
best
up.
scene in the whole movie.
It was great. And I love that Tom Cruise, he's a crazy Scientologist and he's an asshole in a
Yes.
lot of ways. But at the end of the day, I do appreciate that the man understands what he's making. He's creating entertainment and he knows what people like, and he is working hard to make sure that his films are crowd pleasers and he's giving people what they want. I think he does a great job of
Yeah.
doing that. It means we get 20 versions of Mission Impossible, which I'm not super excited about, but yeah, I thought Top Gun was really, really fun. I thought like I think the big hullabaloo over the nominees, one of the biggest snubs that people talked about was that it didn't get nominated for cinematography. And I think I agree with that being a
I agree.
crazy snub because the cinematography is incredible. Just the figuring out they had to
Yep.
do to create all of that stuff that was going on inside the cockpits and all of the flying around. And
Yeah.
normally in those sorts of movies, especially when you go to see it in a movie theater and you're like this one little piece of a person, there's this giant screen. It feels like everything is like, just it happens with like all of the like Marvel
Yeah.
and DC movies all the time where it's like just a mess. They did a really excellent job of like taking you along and showing you exactly what you needed to see. So the cinematography is incredible. The
Amazing.
story, very, very enjoyable. Um, it's just not a best picture nominee. Again, it didn't do anything to elevate the form. I think it did an incredible job of uh pinpointing being a nostalgia film and like just hitting those notes perfectly. I think if anything, that may be the innovation of that film, is that it figured out how to create a sequel 20, 30, 40 years later, almost
Almost.
40 years later, and know what it was that made that fun, made it good, and made it enjoyable for people, and then to elevate it to the next level. It is all it is a feat to create a sequel that is better than the original, and I think
No.
Top Gun absolutely achieved it. But again, I just didn't think it was like any great piece of art. It didn't to me,
Yeah.
other than the cinematography, which didn't get fucking nominated. I didn't think there was anything like super innovative or like, challenging the format of filmmaking to it. So,
It's
this, would leave it as into just basically the question of like, what what is a best picture nominee? Like, what is the
yeah.
criteria that they're using to pick a best picture nominee? Because I was of the understanding that it was something that either was the height of filmmaking as a form, or does something to elevate and change and innovate upon filmmaking as the form. And I just don't think that either Avatar: The Way of the Water or Top Gun did that, nor do I think Fablemans did that either. I think Fablemans just slid in because it was Steven Spielberg
Steven
and it was a movie
Spielberg.
about making movies.
Fablemans was one of the many that went home with zero. It didn't win a single award. Top Gun Maverick did take home Best Sound. So Ren, as our nice little sound expert, Ren, there
I'm
was
always
Top Gun
excited when the
Maverick.
war film doesn't take it.
And I think this one just had so much more to do. Like that's always the
It
thing is
did. It
it
had,
had a
yeah.
lot more to contend with than particularly this war film nominated this year that I was a little bit nervous with Snipe It because they always have a chance to snatch it away. But the sound work is great. And I think the mixing for like the dialogue to
Mhm.
be so well done was something Christopher Nolan should take notes on. But yeah, I had no problem with them winning
Burn.
sound. All right, so my number nine um might be controversial. I know because film Twitter people love it. And I liked it. I admired it more than I actually liked it. And that was Women Talking at number
Wow.
nine for me.
Women Talking is so much higher on my ranking. Go ahead.
I was really interested to see how you felt about it at the end of the day. So I'm excited for us to get there because it's the one we have never talked about. I've never gotten Ren's opinions or thoughts at all.
Because they made it impossible to find. Like it wasn't in movie theaters, it wasn't streaming anywhere, and then they put it on Prime for 5 days.
They were like, it's Oscar week, you can watch it, and then we're taking it back off. So you could literally have
Love
until
it
Monday
a little
morning.
bit. I thought that was kind of like an interesting experiment. I'm wondering if they'll do that again, where they're like, we're gonna
Yeah.
get the rights, it's gonna be 5 days, you watch it right now, all right, you're done.
That's crazy. But I saw Women Talking actually at the Denver Film Festival in November. And I love the musical score, first of all. That's a category that I'm
Beautiful.
really sad it got snubbed for. That's also Hilder, the woman who scored Joker, also scored Women Talking. So she's our
Ah,
only ever woman to win in this category. And then she
love
gets
that.
snubbed this time because I think that score was better than most of the scores nominated.
It blended beautifully and perfectly with the film itself. There's a
Yes.
saying among the sound designers that if nobody makes a comment about the sound, then you've done a good job.
Yeah.
That, because it fits so seamlessly into the world and you didn't notice it all, that means that you have, achieved
Again,
the height of
Christopher
your
Nolan, take note because when people walk out of the theater, almost every time they're talking about the sound design in your films, and most of the time, not in a positive way. Women Talking,
another burn.
I just felt that it really struggled to elevate beyond the script. Like the script was such the highlight of this film. What they were saying
Mhm.
was interesting, and the conversation was really
Mhm.
important and interesting, and
Mhm.
there was a need for it. But to elevate beyond that, I really found it to be a struggle. It's one of
Mhm.
those films that it didn't have as much cinematic quality as I would have liked. It felt very play like. Obviously,
That's why I loved it. That was specifically while I was watching. I was like, this was like it was a play. Somebody must have. I
yeah.
love a play like movie.
And sometimes I'm okay, but I feel like you just have to find a way above that. The cinematography, I understand why the cinematography choice was made to mute it in such a way that they did. But again, it left me wanting a little bit with that really flat, dark, gray cinematography. Even if it was conveying a message, I understood why it was happening, but I still was kind of like, oh, okay. The acting was fantastic, and I really just find it disappointing that none of these women were nominated anywhere.
I do have
Um,
to point out I was very confused because I felt like Frances McDermott was pretty prevalent, right? When they listed, like she's on the cast list. She's
very small
she's
role,
got like 4 lines, and then that's
very
it.
small
She's on the
role.
screen for maybe 3 minutes total.
Yeah, no, it was like Claire Foy and Jessie Buckley. I thought like stole the show here for me. I thought they were both so fantastic. But it
Mm-hmm.
was at the end of the day again.
Oh, I really liked
I
the other
appreciated
girl,
it.
the Rooney Mara.
Rooney
Mara
Mara, I
Rooney.
thought she was good.
She's
Maybe it just wasn't as showy, so maybe I was like, okay,
it
compared
was
to
not as showy.
Jesse Buckley
She
and
was the
Claire Foy were
peaceful.
the fiery ones who really got into it. But then we break down that they too are also obviously in pain. And I know that this is also based off of a real like little community over in like I don't remember which country it is for in the 2010s, which blew my mind. So the setting of this film was nuts because I just assumed it was a period piece. And then a modern day vehicle pulls up in the middle, like near the end of the
Oh
movie, and I
no,
was like, "What the fuck?" Like, oh, okay, this is
I assumed
now.
that I don't know why I assumed and knew already they were Amish, like right from the very beginning. Maybe because I'm like probably because I lived in Pennsylvania for a while. I was like, oh yeah, those are Amish. They're clearly Amish. I think
Remember?
also because they referred to it as a colony. That to me, I
Yeah.
don't know. I immediately knew that it was that
And
it
then we
was
have Ben
Amish.
Wishaw's character, which I didn't love his perspective. Like, I mean, I don't know. I know you want something different, maybe to break it up in a film
You know,
about the
what I
women
liked
perspective.
about it was just it's the contradiction of there's instead of there being a token woman, there's a token
Token
man.
man.
You know that, and I love those moments where she's like, "You're here to record. I don't want your opinions."
Shut up.
Right? Like that's I think
Yeah.
it's just yeah. So that was I
But
liked that it was a play sort of thing.
yeah.
I just thought the conversation was really interesting. I
Yeah.
loved so much of the philosophy. I thought the acting was incredible. I also thought the cinematography was gorgeous. I just thought it was like a really beautiful film. The music was good. Yeah, like for me, I have it
100%.
higher on my list because I do feel like Women Talking was one of those films that like elevates the form of film. Like isn't elevated.
Yeah.
It's at the peak of making a film.
And I was really
And
happy it did win Best Adapted Screenplay. It actually,
yeah,
look, it's a shock that it got into Best Picture a little bit because literally the only other award it was nominated for was Best Original or Adapted Screenplay. It didn't get
I'm glad it
nominated for
did because
anything else.
I wouldn't have watched it otherwise. I didn't make like a really strong effort to find it, partially because I wasn't streaming anywhere and it wasn't easy to find. It sounds like it's going to be miserable just from the description. Like it just sounds like it's going to be depressing, right?
Yeah,
Like it
no,
just sounds like, oh,
definitely.
awful. But it's actually ends up being really beautiful, and
Yeah.
just the arguments that these women make and the way they're able to forgive each other and themselves. And I just love that there's the one line about how we turn forgiveness into permission. And I think just like
Mhm.
maybe it's just because I am a woman and I've been in
Mhm.
relationships where I allow so much bullshit to happen, because if you love someone, you forgive them, you let them grow, you let them change, you let them make mistakes. And it is so easy for that to become, instead of forgiveness, to just become like permission for this person
Yeah.
to treat you like shit. And I think I loved that about it, that it's, it takes this completely, it's a world we're not familiar with, right? Like I don't live on a fucking farm, but it's universal themes
Yeah.
that these women like it's irrelevant that they don't have modern technology going on in their world.
Mhm.
It just touches on so much. And I also just love that. Can you name any other ensemble films that are almost exclusively female? Because I can't think of like any. So I think
Yeah.
that to me was a big part, is it was just like really refreshing and beautiful to see something really serious and complicated and philosophical, and just this really beautiful script
Mhm.
and all the things they're talking about, given to a bunch of women
Yeah.
to sit and just tear apart with their acting teeth. Those women killed it. It was just so fun. I loved all those
Yeah.
old women. They were great. And it was just so nice to have these, these character types you're not used to, right? Like the angry, fiery women. Like women aren't meant to hang on to their anger and their
Yeah.
rage in the way that some of these women were. And then, typically you see a lot of old people are framed as like crotchety and set in their ways, but in this film, it's the old people that are really kind of exploring
Except Frances McDormand.
except for Francis Dormant.
But those do still exist. Like that's the
Yeah,
thing. It's
and that's
that
the
woman
point.
still exists.
Yeah. And yeah, and then these older women who are really trying to understand and to grow and to change their minds. And It's
And you
so
even had
refreshing
those
also
young
just to see
women trying to
people.
find their voice and their
Yeah.
place amongst the conversation with these adult women. So yeah. So
So
I
that pushed
fully
it way up my
appreciate it.
list, but
That's why I haven't really talked about women talking much in the space, because I see mostly women and how they speak on it and just absorb their thoughts on it. And
yeah.
it obviously has a place, and it's just that's why I'm not mad it got nominated by any means.
Yeah.
I actually think it missed out on a couple extra nominations that it should have received, including Best Original Score.
Mhm.
But I'm happy it won for Adapted Screenplay, because it was the best in that
Screenplays, yeah.
category.
Yeah.
So then my eighth place is Elvis. Elvis has a lot of entertainment factor to it. It has a lot to really love. When it goes full balls to the wall, Baz Luhrmann, I loved it. Like that
Me
first,
too.
it's pretty much the first half of the movie. I was on board with Elvis. When we
Yep.
are glitz and glamour, when
And
we are
ridiculous
yeah,
and
when we are
surreal.
doing the thing, when the women
Yeah. That's
literally
the
go
best
into
scene in
seizure convulsions.
other than everything in Everything Everywhere All at Once. It was the best scene of the year.
Amazing. Just seeing them like have this revelation because he moved his hips. It was so good, and such a good just demonstration of the times and the suppression of the times. It's that second half that really kind of threw Elvis down to this eighth place for me. It gets to be too much. It just becomes this serious drama. I also don't love that the script, like, I understand it wants to pay respect to Elvis, but for the screenplay to completely pretty much absolve Elvis of any autonomy over his life. Like they go, I would say, almost further than absolving him of like fault in some of the more questionable parts of Elvis's life.
Yeah, like
It
let's talk about how
absolved him
old
of
Priscilla was when he was dating her.
yeah,
She
they
was
they they very much
14.
brush over that. Oh, she was younger than Elvis, and then move right along. Well, no, no,
Yeah,
no, 14, and he was 24. Let's be
yeah.
clear.
Big gap in addition to the fact that she was very young.
And people are like, oh, well, they didn't have sexual intercourse. Oh, yeah, Priscilla has said they did everything but penetrate. Let's be very clear. She has made it very clear they did pretty much everything else under the sun while she was that young. Not
And
okay.
I know they're from the South, but still.
And this happened, yeah. And not to mention, they really towed the line on Elvis's relationship with the Black community in terms of what he took from that community,
I,
and
I
how that.
just
And I know that's a complicated issue all the way around, and
I feel like I feel like you could have sidestepped those more easily if that was the route that you wanted to go by just really leaning into the surreal aspect of it and just
yes,
going full Baz Luhrmann on it and just like making it about all the glitter and the sequins and
yes,
the music and the big musical numbers and not really don't you don't need to absolve Elvis if you don't want to.
yeah, just
That's then just don't
focus
talk
on the
about it
show
and then just
person.
lean into the
Yeah,
surreal performance of
keep
it
it on the
and then I
stage
think
basically if you want to do that, but instead they bring in the colonel, who was a real person, who was accused of all of this and is seen particularly by Elvis fans as like a huge villain of Elvis's life, which again that could be
I
an
mean,
interesting
yes,
conversation.
he seems like he was
He's
a
terrible.
villainous piece of shit,
Yes.
sure.
And again, especially in this day and age where obviously we just had Britney Spears with her whole conservatorship, and we've had a lot of
Mm-hmm.
other stars who have been exploited by their family or by their
Mm-hmm.
management. And Elvis, I do think, falls under that. He was exploited by this man. Even if you look through the history, you see this man was a leech on this Elvis and did do a lot of the things. He kept him from going overseas, blah, blah, blah.
But even
But
the movie even shows that Elvis still had power that he could have
he
exercised
didn't.
had he not, yes, like,
But
oh, I'm
instead, again, the movie sidesteps like, oh, Elvis cheated to end his marriage. He was a
yeah.
cheater. And that's why Priscilla left. To just randomly, Elvis walks in the door one day and it's like, oh, she's leaving. And we don't know why she's leaving. She just is tired of something. Or the
Well,
pills, like
and
that
that
also was his fault, was Elvis and the pills and the drugs suddenly is the colonel's fault. And he's drugging him on his deathbed to push him on the stage. Like it got real. And then Tom Hanks.
Yeah, it got
Um,
real dark, and I didn't, exactly. If you're not going to get into all of the reality of it
yeah,
and make it a real autobiography, then you should have stayed with the way that it was at the beginning. When it was so fun at the beginning, and that was really
so
what I
fun.
wanted
Me
in
too.
my Elvis biopic from Baz Luhrmann. I,
Like we're
I,
turning Ferris wheels into faces in that first act. Like he's literally his
yeah,
transitions are so outrageous and
yeah.
ridiculous that
I
you're
don't
like,
know. I think he just
yeah.
got bored towards the end or something. I don't know. It was like,
And Tom Hanks was playing a caricature of this man. Like, I don't know what happened with Tom Hanks last year. He gave us two of his worst performances of his whole entire career in Pinocchio. And then here, I thought he was terrible in Elvis, like
here's the
really bad.
thing. I don't think that Tom Hanks is a character actor, but damn if he's not trying.
I mean, he tried. They put him
Yeah.
in the makeup.
He's not. He's Tom Hanks, and he's best when he's being Tom Hanks, or he's Tom Hanks with a funny foreign accent.
Oh, that
That's
accent. Oh, that accent. I was like, oh, Tom, this is like almost offensive, except I don't know what country you're supposed to be from to really be offended for them. But
I think that was supposed to be the idea. I think that
yeah,
he was
he was
vaguely
like a
and
Tommy Wiseau. I mean,
I
that
think that
was
was
kind of the
intentional.
guy.
I
I
think
went
he's
and
some kind
looked
of
it
a
up because I didn't know as much about the Colonel. Like I had heard of him because my stepmom is a big Elvis fan. So I knew a lot about Elvis. I didn't know as much as about this man outside of like real surface level. So I went and looked it up and yeah, he was like a shady trying to dodge letting you know where he was from. Uh
yeah.
so a lot of
Which is
that shit was true.
it's so I'm like I fairly recently went to the Elvis's hometown in
Graceland. Oh.
Tupelo.
Oh, okay.
And I listened to like a podcast that covered some of the songs that he was writing
Mhm.
and talked about, and like he's actually he's I just knew he was Elvis, right? He's
Yes, of
famous.
course.
But in like the past several years, I've like learned more little tidbits about him, and he is a really interesting, complicated historical figure, and I would be down for an autobiography, or not, for a biography, a
Yes.
biopic, that biopic, whatever,
Whatever.
um that really does is like really reality
Yeah.
set, but the weirdness of Baz Luhrmann's version kind of sitting in reality but kind of not, and then it succeeds in not really doing either.
Yeah. And then we saw that at the end of the day, surprise, this was a shocker. Elvis walked away with 0 Oscars on the awards night when it was favored in 3 separate categories. I had it predicted in 3 categories. So it lost best costumes to Wakanda Forever, Black Panther Wakanda Forever. It lost best makeup and hair to The Whale. And then it lost Best Lead Actor, also to The Whale and Brendan Fraser.
I'm really glad that Brendan Fraser won. Everybody
Me
and their mother
too.
is glad that Brendan Fraser won
Me
because
too.
he's a sweet, wonderful man and he deserves it.
I have to say,
And
I think the Batman was better hair and makeup than both of them, but that's just my opinion. It
I
did the
actually
prosthetics.
personally, so I haven't seen The Whale. I have seen images of The Whale, and it is my opinion as a person who has done some special effects makeup, it is a lot harder to make makeup look real than it is to do makeup that looks fun and interesting and grungy, or
Yeah,
like
yeah.
any sort of like gore or anything. That's all actually fairly easy. It's actually really easy to do gore, to be honest. It's like you can't mess it up. I mean, you can, but you can't really. Like if you fuck it up a little bit, it's like, oh, it's a little messier than it should be. But yeah, so I think especially because he looks so good. He looks like a real person. Like I've never seen a fat suit, a person that's been made to look fatter than themselves, look real in the way that The Whale managed to do it.
Yeah.
So I think I'm okay with
I
them
also
having.
wonder if Tom Hanks's prosthetics really hurt Elvis because they also did not look great. And neither did Fat Elvis near the end of the film. Didn't look
Yeah.
great. So I wasn't too mad. And again, we've talked about this. I've kind of harped on it a little bit. Sorry, Austin Butler fans. I do think he did a great job. I will say that. I do think he brings a lot to Elvis in this film, more so than just an impersonation. But on a surface level, if you're going to impersonate anyone on you're like if you're doing an impersonation class, I feel like Elvis is like part of the starter kit. Like
Yeah.
He's one of the easy
Got a
celebs
pretty
to
iconic
get
sort of
down.
drawl
The
there.
draw, even his singing voice. Like we always talk about singing versus lip syncing in these movies. Like, oh, Rami Malek lip synced, or just this past year, Naomi Ackles, who played Whitney Houston, lip syncs. Yes, because Whitney Houston, it's hard to sound like and convince people you're Whitney Houston because her singing voice is not easy to
It's so
replicate.
hard. Her
Elvis's
range is
singing voice
superhuman.
is not difficult
Yeah.
to. You just have to get deep enough. If you can get your voice into that timbre, then you can do Elvis. I mean,
I'm
it
a
is what
woman
it
and I
is.
can do Elvis.
Okay, burn. No.
I
So I'm
think
just
actually
saying.
my only criticism is that he was real obnoxious about it afterwards. He was
Well,
like he couldn't get out of the accent and he was doing like all of his interviews and it's like,
he's
dude,
still
oh,
doing it.
that's
I
the
mean, he's
worst kind of
still,
actor, Larry. I hate that kind of actor.
and a lot of people think
You're
he did.
doing a job. Stop it.
A
Stop
lot of people
treating
think
it
he did
like
voice damage to himself doing that damn voice like that, and I wouldn't
did he?
completely. I wouldn't put it past him.
You
He's been
wouldn't be
doing it for like
surprised.
3 years at this point. Like he's still doing it. And I wonder if that also might have cost him Best Actor. Is it started to become tiresome? Is everyone's like, why is he still doing his Elvis voice, like accepting awards? This is too
The only
much.
thing worse was Madonna's weird English accent for a period of time.
I mean, Madonna, she has a lot of problems, Miss Madonna. We love your music, girl. You're an icon, but there's a lot of things
There's a
going
lot
on
going
here.
on up there.
Um, but yeah, so I was actually happy Elvis lost its awards because I didn't think it actually deserved to win them.
No.
Same thing with costume design. I understand it's difficult to get period pieces and make them look right to the modern eye
Yeah.
because if we looked at especially like 1800s costumes, if
Yeah.
they made them really accurate, we would all be looking like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Like the proportions and everything. But really, you have a whole template. Again, Elvis's showy costumes are probably a lot of fun to make and work on,
Mhm.
but you have a template. Like, I mean, they're right there for you to
yeah, they didn't make any original costumes.
compared to
There's no,
Wakanda Forever, where they're making like headpieces, they're
they
making
designed a completely new world.
they had to, yeah, make a world and make it feel like something plausible.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
so, plus Ruth Carter became the first ever Black woman to become a multi-Oscar winner. So,
Woohoo!
for being a woman making the costumes for Wakanda Forever. So Elvis is number 7 or number 8 for me. What's number 7 for you then, Ren?
I have Tar
Okay.
as number 7. I just like the movie. So I didn't like you and I talked about this. I didn't really like the first act because I was like, oh, I thought of. So one time I went to an art gallery opening and I heard the people there talking. And I was there, I was doing like a catering gig, and I realized, oh my God, this is what theater people must sound like to non-theater people when we're talking to each other. And so watching the first act of Tar was like, oh my God, this is just like the most pretentious classical music conversations ever. I don't know what the hell they're saying. Ugh. So I found all of that very like frustrating and boring to watch and kind of like a little irritating. But then I think it has its payoff as it goes through. You understand, oh, she does have she's showing you at the very beginning her place
Yeah.
of privilege in that world. In a privileged world, she has a place of privilege. You didn't pick up on the other stuff like her talking about how she wants to expand her scholarship program to men because the women have not turned out as good as she wants them to. What?
Yeah.
So you start to see these cracks in like this woman. So I thought it was really interesting to take this idea of, the abuse of power that you normally see coming from men and to have a woman do it. But other than that, this movie is just an incredible feat of watching Kate Blanchett just tear up the scenery. She's incredible. She's so good.
Yes.
She's a fantastic actress, but other than Kate Blanchett being incredible and the story having an interesting take on a topic that's very relevant and sort of just, turning it on its head. I often proclaim that real feminism is allowing women to be villains. Like women, not just, all feminists. Women are terrible. women can suck. If anybody's ever watched the other two, that's the little nod to that show. It's fantastic.
All right.
Highly recommend. But yes, no, women can suck. And I think that's important for us to acknowledge that, like, we can support women and also acknowledge that they are fully formed human beings that are just as capable of being, with great power comes great responsibility, that whole thing,
Yeah.
absolute power corrupts, absolutely, that sort of concept, right? Like, you see where she came from, and then you see where she gets to and how much she transforms and how much of an asshole she becomes. And how utterly incapable of acknowledging the damage that she caused as well. So yeah, she's just a really incredible, terrible person. And it was really fun to watch her be created by Cate Blanchett. I liked this film. I just, it wasn't my favorite thing. And I think that just the first like third kind of killed it for me, where I was like, oh, this fucking movie. So that's what kind of shifted it down my list personally.
Well, at the end of the day, Tar also walked away with 0 wins. It only really had a chance in one category in lead actress, Cate Blanchett, but it did not prevail there. So, no wins for Tar at the Oscars this year. So, Lydia Tar, her losing streak continues. Meanwhile, the one thing I love is coming out of it, people Googling if Lydia Tar is like a real
Real
person.
person. Oh my God.
And I think that speaks to the film and the screenplay and Kate
Yeah.
specifically. But no, she's not real, y'all. She's a completely fictional character. No,
But
never, never.
seems totally realistic. It absolutely
Yes,
feels like right.
this
Like,
could be a woman that we're
this could
canceling.
absolutely be a woman, right? Yeah. So we
Yeah.
can talk. Yeah, white women in power can be just as shitty.
White women, look, sometimes white women are the worst because they like sneak under like some, because they're still not the top of the oppression ladder, like the top of the privilege ladder, but they're
Correct.
pretty close. And sometimes they can sneak in with some of the most harmful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, at number 7, I have one you've already put on here, and that is Top Gun Maverick at 7 for me. Mostly, yeah, I think it's beautiful. It really, really was robbed of a cinematography nomination. One of the most egregious snubs in that category this year.
Egregious.
However, I guess it made up for it by stealing well, in my opinion, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio's spot in the adapted screenplay category. So that's just my thought, because there's no world Top Gun Maverick should have been nominated in adapted screenplay, but that's just me.
Sorry,
It's
real quick, since you brought it up, because we don't have this anywhere else, I do think it's hilarious that the only person who could steal the mantle of a best animated feature from Pixar is fucking Guillermo del Toro.
Listen, the only person, Leica can't do it, none of these other people can do it. The person to get stop motion animation, that damn best animated feature, is Guillermo del
It makes
Toro.
me a little angry, and now I'm like, Guillermo, why don't you just go direct something for
I
Leica
like
so they
wait,
can get a
like
fucking Oscar because they deserve it,
they
and the
they do.
and the animation will look a lot better than it did in Pinocchio. I wasn't a
La
huge fan of it, to be honest.
ooh, oh, okay. Shots fired.
I
Okay.
wasn't. I didn't love Pinocchio.
I loved
I
it.
I didn't like the design of Pinocchio,
Well, that was
and
probably one of the more questionable parts.
yeah, I didn't like the design
And
of
the
Pinocchio,
whale.
and I didn't like Pinocchio. Like, I actually literally today, because I'm trying to go through the original animated Disney films chronologically with my baby here and there. So I just watched the original Pinocchio today, and the Pinocchio in the Disney films, he's oblivious, and he's got this innocence that makes it like okay, and he's got these outside forces that kind of just steer him in the wrong direction, and he has a hard time getting out, and oh yeah, he's here. So like, Pinocchio in Disney he's not an asshole. Pinocchio in Guillermo del Toro's film is a little shit. He's just
He's
a
crap.
little nasty little shit, so
He
mean
reminds
little.
me he reminds me a lot of like Mowgli from the original Jungle Book, who's a little
Mm,
bit of a brat. And
yes.
sometimes you're like, Bagheera, just whack him, just whack that little head a little bit. Um, but no, I loved Pinocchio. What can I say? And I loved that he brings in his like Meso Mexican design even into this, like the afterworld stuff, and the
I thought that was very
sprites.
cool.
Oh,
I
so
loved the fascism
and the
just going. We're
fascism.
like, I think that's that the very Guillermo del Toro move, and I
And I
thought it
thought it
was
was
really
such a more effective than the donkey shit. See, that's the
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of stuff.
yeah. Agreed.
That's where the Disney one flies off the rails for me. Is like once we start getting
but
into donkeys and this like pleasure
but also
land,
watching that as an adult, and people have talked about that dark.
it's
Like
very dark, and I
those
don't
little
like it.
boys don't get untransformed.
I don't
They're crying
like
for
it.
their mothers, and that's it. They're donkeys.
Donkeys. Um, but no, Top Gun. Sorry, Top Gun. The actual one
Okay.
that got into Best Picture. Yeah, no, I don't think it really deserved this spot, but that's also just me. What can I say? But it's fun. It's a peak blockbuster filmmaking. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
In terms of actual filmmaking, it's not my favorite blockbuster of the year. I'm gonna mention it again. That's the Batman for me. But the cinematography stunning, the acting is what it needs to be. Like nobody really gives a great performance, but nobody gives a bad performance per se.
They're all perfect for what they need to be.
It could have used a little bit more of that beach scene because rewatching the first Top Gun, it is homoerotic AF. I mean, it is literally one step away. Like I would not question if that was the opening to like a gay porno of the time, to be honest. Like it is real close in so much. And this one they knew, that's why they made sure to add that beach scene in. They're like, we gotta add a little bit of homoeroticism in here somewhere, right? Okay.
Crucial.
It's crucial. It's the Top Gun brand.
Piece of it.
The Jennifer Connelly stuff is what really drags this movie down. Like, who
Agreed.
cares? Like, I mean, it's a completely pointless.
Totally.
You don't buy into it. You don't care.
Nope.
She's a new character. It's not even the same love interest as the
Nope.
original Top Gun. Who cares? So that's really what drags this movie down. And that's kind of how I felt about the characters in general. That's why
Yeah.
I never got passionate about Top Gun Maverick like some people.
Yeah.
There was nothing for me to emotionally connect to in this
I
film.
think if
It's
you
fun.
needed
It's
a
cool.
romantic storyline, which I don't think we need romantic storylines anymore. I don't need old ass man Tom Cruise's old man
Give it to Miles
storyline.
Teller. Give it to the
Yes,
son. That's
please.
who
One
should
of
have had
the
the love
many
story,
sexy little men in that, including Lewis Coleman. Actually,
including
don't think
Lewis
he's
Coleman.
very cute.
He's very adorable and one of
I'm
the
always
best
happy
characters
that
in this
he's
film.
yeah.
Like the
There's
heart of
there's
this film.
there was plenty of options. They even had a female in the. They could have Larry. They could have even made a gay thing happen there.
They
Then you
could
would have
have.
had all your homoeroticness
It
just
would
like
have,
flat
but
out.
we had to appeal to the military
Middle
loving
America, gotta
middle
have the middle
America.
America. Yeah,
That's
I
who
get
this
it now.
movie
Yeah,
was for.
but they had a lady. Then they could have just done a
They could
thing,
have. They
but they
could have.
didn't. They chose
And
to.
they didn't. But it's fine. It's fun. It's fine. I just wasn't emotionally invested, and that's why Top Gun is number 7. So who do you got at number 6, Ren?
I had Elvis, so
Okay,
we talked about
perfect.
it.
Fun. With
Fun at the
spiraling,
beginning,
crazy
and
Elvis.
then kind of falls off towards the end. And yeah, I had lots of thoughts about it after I saw it, and I vocalized a lot of them to you. Where yeah, it's basically it was needed to be one or the other thing. It needed to be big and bold and fancy and a fantasy, or it needed to be a biography. And it sort of mushed in the middle, and it
Yeah.
kind of lost me.
All right.
But
Well,
otherwise, which is a shame because I love Boz Lerman, and
yeah, Boz, don't
he
take another
deserves an
decade.
Oscar,
Yes.
but it's not for this film. I think
No. Moulin Rouge.
Moulin Rouge is
It's
his
like his
opus.
thing. Yeah.
I think he
Uh,
needs
and
another shot.
yeah, no, no. But we don't take another decade to make a new
He just
film,
needs
though,
to reel
Boz.
back. He needs to reel back a little bit. I think he needs to do something a little bit indie,
But
but with
don't go
like
like Australia on us again. We don't need that. Like
no.
that's what I get scared of with Boz. If he reels back too much, then he tries to do some like Australia type bullshit, and it's like no, hold on. Nobody wanted that.
Can you just
But
make a Moulin Rouge again? That's it. That's all I want.
that's all we want. All right. Well, at number 6 for me, another one you've already mentioned, I have. It's actually shocking to me that it is this high. It's Avatar: The Way of Water
That's
at number
crazy,
6 for
Larry.
me.
You love the whales, though.
Listen, that I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Because when I
Yes, the
sat down
animals.
about it, I was like, when it comes to these two blockbusters, the thing that differentiates them is at the end of the day, I cared more about what was happening in Avatar, as formulaic as it is. I still became attached. Like that whaling scene in freaking Avatar,
There's not
traumatizing.
enough animal revenge scenes in film.
And that whale becomes like the MVP of that final
Yes.
fight. Like getting that whale to get redemption. They literally
Uh-huh.
created a whole redemption arc for this damn whale
For a
character.
whale.
Um,
I don't want you all to know. As soon
loved
as I
it.
watched the movie, I texted Larry and was like, "I know you loved that whale."
I loved he was like the best character in the damn movie was this whale. But like that scene where the whale and her baby die, like is
Yes.
horrifying. Like it's so sad.
Horrifying.
And I will give Kate Winslet that, her
She
reaction
did.
to her whale friend dying. I did find it a little cheesy that they could understand the whales, but that's this whole world. It was just a little much when they were having legitimate back and forth conversation with the
The
whale. I was
whole
like,
movie is a little cheesy, Larry. You just your heart, your cold, bitter heart was warmed
by
by
the
the
whale.
animal revenge storyline.
And it is what it is. I'm a sucker for an animal rights movie. What can I
Yep.
say? And that's what this movie is at its core. Again, is a pro of conservation, pro animal movie.
Yes.
I just hate that they reused the villain. That was like my biggest
Yeah.
gripe with this movie is that we found this really contrived way to bring the villain back from the first movie to have him come again. And
It
he
also
doesn't
was like
die, so we're
irrelevant.
gonna get him in the third one too. It's the same villain again.
That's so it was irrelevant though, right? Like they made it seem like, oh, they had to make them avatars so they could sneak in. And then they're not sneaky at
No.
all. They roll in immediately and
Yeah,
are
so this one
clearly
they make
not.
him avatars so that they're as powerful. Like so the first one they're like we want to merge into the culture and infiltrate it from the inside, and then this one is a little bit of that and more so like we need to be as strong as these big creatures. And then we had that spider boy who I was like get him out of this film. The like real the Mowgli, the damn Mowgli of
He's
the
the only
movie.
reason that this film is not fully animated.
I was like, what is he doing here? Like, why do we have to? Oh God! And the
Because
decisions
you
he
got to
starts
lean into that
making,
family themes
and the damn
12 times.
it becomes a soap opera with him being the kind of son of the villain. Like, it was just
Yeah,
too much. I was like, oh. And then we
it
have the
was very
girl who's
silly.
Sigourney Weaver. Sigourney Weaver's playing a 16-year-old in this movie.
The 16-year-old with her own daughter.
It's very
That's
strange.
Larry. I was like, really, did they de-age her voice? There's no way. She was
Very weird. But I actually liked her little character. Like, I think there's something
yeah,
interesting happening with her character.
sure.
But then the son that
It
dies.
should have been a season of a show.
Yeah, then we get that son, and of course they kill that son because we don't get to know him. Like you don't know
I
him
didn't
who
care
he
at
is.
all he was dead. I
Like
cared because I'm a mother and I was like, oh, the pain. I could, yeah, if you lose a child, that would be
I'm
agonizing.
sorry. I'm ready for Zoe Saldana to kill humans in these movies. Like, look, all of this peace, kumbaya bullshit is all good, but she has reason to kill these MFers, and I'm
She's
on board with
always
it.
ready to as
She
well.
is ready, and people always get in her way. She wants murder.
People are always trying to calm down that female rage.
Screw
Let it
the
rip.
colonizers. Let them die. But yes, it's beautiful. It's pretty. It's entertaining enough. It does
We
what
don't
it
care about
wanted to do
any of the
well enough.
characters except for the
Um,
whale. We care about the whale.
it's that whale that puts it above Top Gun at the end of the day for me. So yeah, I'm glad
Great.
that other than one film each, we had the same bottom
Give or take.
five. We just swapped our women's stories that we liked. That's
Yeah,
that's what swapped out our top fives. But
makes sense.
all right, Rand, what's your number five?
I have All Quiet on the Western Front,
Ooh.
which always surprising to me when the war movies aren't at the bottom. A lot of I'm always like, the war movie. I gotta watch the war movie. I'm like never excited about it. But I thought All Quiet on the Western Front. I thought the cinematography was incredible. I thought the acting was incredible. Like,
In
like for
his
me to not
first, that lead,
understand the
this was
language,
his first film
he
ever.
was so good. For I didn't right for me not understanding the language and to still be able to be like, no, that's incredible acting. Um, I just thought the structure of it was so well done. Having the gentlemen in their lovely quarters and this very calm, serene, slow going,
Yeah.
methodical race, banon race to the armistice while people are just like dying around, like, and then you go out to the like chaos of everything that's
Yeah.
happening. Um, yeah, and it's it's just one of those and everybody dies films. So yeah, I just thought it was like a real this I thought it, I think it fits in that place of it being at the top tier of filmmaking, that like all around it's a very well done film. I was fully engaged the entire time I was
Dark,
watching it. I
depressing.
was like upset a little bit every single time somebody died. It was like, oh God. And like I knew they were gonna die. I knew everyone was gonna die. I From the very beginning, I knew everyone was gonna die. And I still was like, oh yeah, okay.
I think what it
Oh,
does so well is that at the end of the day, like those final ones die for literally no reason.
for
Like
nothing.
for
Yeah.
literally nothing. The dumbest shit happens to
Yeah.
kill them at the end, and it's like heartbreaking. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is like the depressing movie because I don't
Yeah.
think this batch, I'll give it that. Last year, I
It
think
was
the
all depressing.
was
Actually,
very
last year wasn't too
depressing.
bad. The
No, it
year
was the year
before that,
before that was so
that was like all
depressing.
depressing films. Yes.
The year Nomadland one, yeah, was the
Yeah.
year of depression.
Yes.
And so this year, this was the big depressor. This was the one that you were like, okay, I don't think I need to watch that again because it just makes me very sad, but
Yeah.
it's really good.
It is
And it
really good.
walked away with 4 Oscars in
Yeah.
total.
Yeah.
It was the tech darling of the evening. So it won for Best Original Score, which people were quite upset about.
I thought the
eh,
score was pretty good.
it upset, shocked everyone when it won for Best Production Design.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
I was like, it was a war movie. You know, they love making those
I
damn
also
barracks.
some of the things I was thinking about while I'm watching it, like, first of all, that's the worst kind. I would never want to act in that movie. Like that sucks. That's the kind of shit. Like it's cold and they're wet and they're covered in gook the whole time. That doesn't sound like a fun like filming situation to me at all. And then I would say my biggest criticism of the whole film was I'm pretty sure it got nominated for best makeup and fuck that shit. I hated the way that they covered his face in gook. And I know that was a stupid directorial choice, that like when he was in battle, he was like wearing his war paint, which was like gook and dirt and shit on the ground. But there was so much of it and it was so distracting and it made it so much harder to see his face and all the fucking acting that guy was doing. So much acting that it was like upsetting for me. So that was my biggest criticism of the film.
Yeah.
But other than that,
Yeah. Then it won Best International Feature, which we all knew.
obviously,
It got nominated for Best Picture.
it's
Default,
always
it's
really
winning.
exciting when an international film does really well at the Oscars. Like,
Yeah. And then finally, you mentioned it. It won for Best Cinematography. So,
yeah, and it
which
was
stunning.
gorgeous.
I mean, it was gorgeously shot. So,
Which is incredible. I think it was like it was very similar to like 1917, where it was just like, oh wow, look at these. It's the incredible dichotomy of these gorgeous, beautiful landscapes, and then these horrifying battle
yeah.
fields of disgusting. The stuff they wrote at the end with
Oh,
they were competing for years over like several hundred feet of territory. It's like
it's nuts.
it's the quintessential war is hell film, and they nailed
They nailed it.
it. It's like,
Well,
yeah, this is war is stupid.
all right. Well, at number 5, I have Tar. Um, so yeah, I mean, this film is honestly make or break Kate Blanchett. If they hired the wrong actress to play Lydia Tar and she wasn't able to nail it, which Kate Blanchett obviously eats this role, the movie fails. Like
Yeah.
it's not quite interesting enough to overcome that
No.
lead performance not killing it.
She's it's really interesting because her character is not likable at all at any point in the
Never.
film,
Never.
but you do understand her charm and the
Yeah.
charisma that has gotten her to where she is. And I think that's an interesting line to balance on,
Yeah.
is I'm totally unlikable, but you get why I'm amazing.
Unlike Ren, I loved the first act of this movie. I like that opening discussion they're just having about that bullshit on the stage is so good. I loved it so much.
Yeah.
And then I love my favorite scene of this movie probably is that lecture that she gives. And it's a one shot. Like you don't even realize as you're
With
watching it
the students.
with the students
Yeah,
that is
that
all
was
a
a good
one
scene.
take. So they're like following her around and switching the
Yeah.
look. I mean, it's amazing. After you like go back and you're like, wait a minute, they didn't cut that entire fucking scene in that room
Yeah.
is nuts. One, but oh, it's so good
And that little
watching
boy that
her.
she's acting with is like he's doing a really good job.
Yeah, and he does such a good job at playing the character he is. And that's another scene where you're like, look, it's such a good way to like stick it to the incels. Like she is the incel, obviously, in
Yes.
this situation and throughout most of the movie. And seeing like just the way she is like degrading this boy.
Well, so Larry, and here's the thing,
But
I was weird for
it
me because
stays,
I
it
was like,
stays like on a line where you understand
yes, I totally and like I
and then
agree
she
with a lot of
pushes
what
it.
she says, where I'm like, we can't ignore the entire history of
Yes.
this art form because of the fact that it's
Yeah.
different from it
But
was
that
today.
they were a shitty person.
Yeah,
That
yeah. Like I totally agree with that. I'm like separate the art from the
But like
artist
most
and the
people who
time
start
period
making
from the
these arguments, like anti-cancel culture arguments, she pushes it like that one step. Like that's where you see in her character. Like she's good, and then she doesn't quite know where that line is, where she pushes it just one step too far, and then
right,
you're
and
like,
she's
oh,
pressuring this guy in a way like she's making
this
him
student and the
uncomfortable.
power.
Yes,
And once again, it shows how she utilizes her power dynamic. So they're in this social setting. She's the lecturer, and she pushes her power onto this student
mm-hmm.
who is young and is
Yeah,
listening to a professor or whatever as guest lecturer
not yeah. This super
who she
famous woman.
respects.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and she does that several times, and then of course you see like moments where she literally threatens a small child. Where she
Which honestly, a little part of me loves that.
I mean, I love it. I'm like, because at first I was like, I get that she's kind of shitty, but I kind of love her for a
Yes,
part of the movie
and that's what's
until
interesting about the
until it all comes
character.
out, until
Yeah,
her full downfall finds itself, and you're like, oh
yeah,
no, 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 no. She's actually a really shitty person.
yeah, yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
no,
Yeah, there's
she's
like exactly. She like, and I think the script does a good job of
yeah,
like
kind of keeps you
finding
in
that
that
balance of like
balance.
showing you these situations where you can like root for her,
Yeah.
even though right, like it's like there's a line between like women being strong and powerful and
Mhm.
taking what they deserve, and then taking what they deserve and being an asshole about it.
And then yeah, and I love that it's like her assistant that she tries to use as well,
Yeah,
but is forced to like fuck over, that ends up bringing upon her downfall and
yeah.
screwing her in the end. Yeah, it's really great stuff. I just think it's a little bit, this is about 30 minutes too long. I won't even say a little
Agreed.
bit.
I didn't need anything past
There's there's just
really
a
I don't think I needed
stretch.
anything past her screaming in her apartment doing the with the accordion.
The apartment song.
I
I
really
mean, I
didn't even
kind of
care
live.
past
I can't
that.
lie.
Yeah.
No, and I think what one of the like great aspects too is how she even is able to do this to her own girlfriend or wife,
Yeah.
and her wife kind of sees it. So like she finds a new girl that she likes, and she literally like starts throwing people under the bus, right? Like right there,
Yeah.
almost in plain view. Like just starts screwing over like honored first chairs in her damn orchestra for this girl that she's like,
Wants to
okay.
screw. Yeah.
And it's just and her wife seeing it play out in real time, and obviously her wife also kind of got there by this same model, and I think it starts to really click for her
Yeah.
watching it. So yeah, there's a lot to love. It's just too long. it
Yeah.
it, it and unnecessarily long. Like there needed to be someone there to cut the fat on Tar, and because there's an amazing story in here
Yeah.
that maybe would have shot up to number one for me if we had just well, no,
Zeroed it in. Yeah.
we could say number two because it still wouldn't have topped my number
No,
one film.
there's no.
So, but if they had zeroed it in, so I liked Tar. I just wished I loved it. All right, Ran number four.
Women talking.
All
And
right.
I think I did a pretty good job of already explaining like why I really liked it. I think at the core, I was gonna put it up there pretty high because it was like, it's like a play. I love this. Just women sitting in one location, one room, having an honest, deep, interesting conversation. I loved that it was an ensemble of women, which I never get, and that you get to see so many good performances from these different types of women. And it's
Written and
yeah, I
directed
just thought
by
it
a
was beautiful
woman,
and I loved it.
thankfully. And I will still say, I stand by if Women Talking had been directed by a man, I think it would have been nominated for 12 awards.
I would buy
The
that.
story it is, I think it would have been like allyship bullshit. Like, I really think because it is an awards movie. When you watch Women Talking, you're like, this is an Oscar film. Like, this is a
Yeah.
film that you expect to see do really well at the Oscars.
Yes.
So it's pretty inexplicable
That's
that
the
it,
sort of film I expect to see the Oscars, not Top Gun and not Avatar Way of Water.
yeah,
Which, let me just, since I already talked about Women Talking, let me just have a real quick aside about Top Gun and, Way of the
Avatar.
Water. And this is the problem with the Oscars. They don't get it. Is that people have been complaining for forever about how, like, the Marvel movies don't ever get nominated. And they're like, well, it's not an Oscar film. We don't nominate blockbusters. It's not about how much money you make, unless it's James Cameron and Tom Cruise, apparently. Then if your money makes all the if your movie makes all the money and everybody loves it, then it deserves an Oscar. Inexplicably. Explain to me why either of these two films is an Oscar worthy film, and I'll wait.
And especially because so many people who champion something like Top Gun were also the ones who thought Black Panther, the first one, shouldn't have been nominated
Yeah,
for Best Picture, when
yeah,
arguably Black Panther made more of a cultural impact than either Avatar, Way of Water, or Top Gun. Not even arguably, it did,
yeah,
period. I'm
it
sorry, it
did.
just did. So if
It
we want to
did.
talk
Both
about
of
a
those are
cultural impact,
literally recalls of old cultural impacts. Original Top Gun and original Avatar had a cultural impact, and then these two came and just sort of like poked that button.
yeah, so yeah, the double
Anyways,
standard against
Women
used
Talking was an
against it. Yeah.
Oscar worthy
It
film.
was, and again, if it had been a man's name on there, it would have been nominated for best director. It would have been nominated. It would have got the score nomination. It would have got a cinematography. It would have been
Yeah.
nominated. I honestly believe that since it was a woman, it wasn't viewed in the
Woman,
same light.
woman scored, woman starring,
All of
woman
it. Yeah, it was a
created.
women
Yeah.
crew, top to bottom, pretty much in the back. A woman novel adapted by a woman who wrote the screenplay, like, and whatever.
Yeah.
As I saw with, um, what was it? What was the recent movie that was like, there's too much of a female gaze, so they fired the woman and brought on a man to direct it. And that's the kind of mentality we're still dealing with. And I think that's the kind of mentality that people viewed Women Talking with. It was just too much of a
Too
woman
much
gaze
woman.
on everything. So I think that's ultimately why if we saw that article, they told Viola Davis and that lady director who did The Woman King to sit down and shut up. So that's still the viewpoint of that, called Viola Davis. You need to settle down, sweetheart. Sit down and shut up. Yeah, so that's still the viewpoint of these males in Hollywood. And I think a big reason why Women Talking didn't see the success you would anticipate from a film like this.
Yeah, it's getting
Anyway.
better, but let's not pretend that all of the problems have been solved.
All right. Well, at number 4, I have. Oh, that means Ren. We have the same top 3 because at number 4, I have All Quiet on the Western Front. Much like Ren, I'm not a big war movie person. I'm a little bit more open for anti-war films, movies that don't celebrate war but expose it more, because we don't get them. So this year we had Top Gun, which was pretty pro like military. It was the pro military movie.
It was a perfect 4th of July weekend sort of
Yeah.
film.
And then we get All Quiet on the Western Front, which was like the anti 4th of July movie. This shit is not heroic. It is not cute. They literally view you as a number and
Yeah.
as a spot on their
Waste
line to
of
die.
life. This
It's a
that's
waste of
what it
life
was. It was a
for
huge
nothing,
waste of life.
for feet of ground to walk on was literally worth millions of lives. And I thought they conveyed all of those messages really well. It was harrowing. The cinematography was gorgeous. I liked the score. I know people are roasting it because it's boom, boom, boom a lot
It
throughout
did
the score.
have a very what's that guy's name from
Hans
the
Zimmer,
Zimmer? Had a very Zimmer vibe to it.
like almost techno-y Zimmer. Like it had just a little flair of like, so it was interesting. I would have probably given it to Babylon over this, just because I think Babylon is a little bit more intricate of a score. That jazz really worked for me, but no, I really liked All Quiet on the Western Front. I didn't anticipate to like it either. I put it off. It was, I think, my last one to watch was All Quiet on the Western Front because I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I can't.
It's
Why?
funny. It's like the last few years they've been doing right. Like after they did, it was like Dunkirk was the one year, and then there was like another war film that was the same year, and they both got nominated, and it was like, ugh, fucking war films. But since then, the war films that end up like coming out actually have really not like
Because we both
Hacksaw Ridge.
loved 1917.
Yeah, 1917 was incredible, was my favorite of the film that year.
It was great.
And Hacksaw Ridge was really good as well. And it was, it just,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're in the
So it's just
swing.
incredible that the war films that are coming out are making an honest effort to not be like war film, structure war film, boom, boom, explosion. Now we talk here quietly about strategies and what's happening. Now, boom, boom, explosion, death.
I will say, I am glad Top Gun beat it for sound though, because I do think
Yeah.
because that's the thing
I
with
don't like
war
when the
films,
war films win sound because they always win sound and it's
and they
like
can just reuse
explosions.
sound. Like that's the other thing is so many other films like fantasy and
There's
sci-fi
no
have to
creating.
literally create sounds that we don't know that literal out of thin air. War films, the template is there. It's
Yeah.
been there for decades. We know how to make the gunshots. We know how to make the bullet sound. We know how to make all of these sounds that war films utilize. So it's always like, okay, well, sure, I guess, but come on.
All
So
right.
I actually think we're probably going to have the same top three in the same order. I'm going to guess. What's your
Okay.
number three, Ren?
Triangle of Sadness.
I also have Triangle of Sadness at number
Great.
three. So we can just talk. We can just talk,
Great.
Ren.
So, Triangle of Sadness. I will say, this is what I've said to everyone. I do think that the menu I preferred as an Eat the Rich film for the year. And I think that the menu just did not play the awards game because I think it had a very Oscar-y vibe to it. And just it didn't have any sort of Oscar buzz whatsoever. Even Ray Fiennes was like really on point in that film. And what's the name of the actress who was the like head waitress?
Oh, Hung Chow.
Oh, that's my aside about the menu, which I think you should watch. It was one of my favorite movies of the year. But yeah, Triangle of Sadness. I just loved it as I think it's a filmy film. It's very stacked with metaphors. Love the comedy of it. The metaphor comedies was so good, and the hypocrisies and the juxtapositions and the I loved all of the characters as the tropes that they were. I loved just how silly it was while still being grounded in
Yeah.
reality. Just feels appropriate for a story about the ultra wealthy and influencers and how like ridiculous it all is in
Yes.
reality. The scene where they all have food poisoning is just an unforgettable scene. Just blazoned into my mind forever.
Never forget it.
I did think that the Lord of the Flies on the island bit that lasts a little bit too long. It was very Lord of the Flies, but with
Yeah.
rich people and poor people and the people that normally serve them, and
And she's
that
so
was just
good. Dolly De
yeah
Leon brings on such like a great energy when she takes over on that
yeah.
damn island.
And it plays with the same themes that we talked about in Tar, but it does it in a more like tongue-in-cheek
Yeah.
sort of way of like even if the person on the bottom as soon as they have the power can become just as ruthless and corrupt as the person who had all the power
Yeah.
before. Like she immediately just
She
is
sees
like,
a
no.
hot man and she's like, well, I do have the power.
Yes.
She snatched his
I
little
love that
ass up
actor.
quick, child. I can't. Oh, Harris Dickinson.
Harris Dickinson, yes. He's
Oh my
super
God,
hot in that film.
super hot.
I loved, one of the things that actually Patrick pointed it out while we were watching it. They did this excellent thing with the sound where they would have this annoying thing happening in the background always. There was always some sort of like there's a pinging noise or there's some sort of grinding noise, but there was always some sort of like annoying noise in the background. Loved the scene where they're arguing in front of
Oh,
the between the doors. Like just
oh
such
my God, it's so
in an
good.
innovative way to film a fight between a
Yes.
couple. It was so fun to watch the
Ugh,
way they're fighting, the doors closing and
yes.
opening and this. Really
All
great.
over the money. And then I love even just the opening. I love the whole Balenciaga, H&M,
Yeah.
Balenciaga. It just it
It's
starts
so
out over the
fun.
top
Yes.
and just once again a full skewering of that entire culture right from the get-go.
Yeah.
And it pretty much never lets up.
Yep.
I do agree. It goes on too long on the island. But pretty much I was like, I adore this thing up until about halfway on the island. I was like, amazing, love it, one of my best of the year. And then it loses just a little bit of steam that prevented it from really like snatching that.
Yeah.
But I laughed a lot throughout
Yeah.
the film. I thought it was really funny.
Mm-hmm.
Everything with like that crazy damn
The
Diane White.
Russian guy.
Like, no, the woman, like, come into the water. And the like
Oh,
poor girl.
and then she's the one who's puking and she's sliding across the floor in her own puke.
Yeah,
That is acting commitment right
and I just
there.
love like just how oblivious these like rich people are. Like they're trying to be nice to the poor people. Like, come in, I want you to swim, and like making this girl's life hell as she's
Yeah.
like, I, I can't. Like, what the fuck?
It took me a little while to figure. I had to like be online with other people talking about it. That the reason that they all got food poisoning was because all the food got left out because they insisted on all
The
of the
swimming.
people going swimming
Yeah,
instead of properly getting everything prepped and stored and
yeah.
ready to go.
And then yeah, that scene of them like yelling over that damn thing about communism and shit, I thought was hilarious with
Yep.
like Woody Harrelson and this crazy man was just so good. So
Yep.
yeah, I loved it. This one also was nominated for 3 awards: original screenplay, director, and here in Best Picture. It actually lost all 3 awards to the same movie, so that's fun. But I think I'm glad it was nominated. I don't think it deserved to win any of those 3 awards, so I'm glad it didn't. However, I do have to give a shout out because she was inexplicably left off of the in memoriam at the Oscars to
Oh
Charlie Dean,
no. Oh
one of your
no.
lead stars and one of your Best Picture nominees
Oh
dies, and you don't
no.
include her in the in memoriam. Seems quite strange and
Ugh,
a little disrespectful.
Jesus.
So a shout out to her.
Isn't
Really
there
tragic
some major fuck up every year on the in
every year.
memoriam? They
I
really
just
got to put
I don't
somebody. They need like
understand.
4 people in charge of checking that thing.
Yeah, so a really tragic passing this past year. Obviously seeing her in this movie, she's great in this
She's great.
movie.
She would have had a huge career ahead of her. It's
And
really
yeah,
tragic.
so all right, Ren, what's our number 2?
The Banshees of Inisherin. I
Yeah.
loved it. So it's written and directed by Martin McDonagh, who is has been for many years now one of my favorite playwrights. He tends to write movies and plays like this. I kind of fell in love with him as a playwright because his plays always felt very cinematic. So it always felt very appropriate that he's shifted to doing movies as well. And it's it's very much in his style. He tends to do these I like to think of them as modern Grimm's fairy tales. They tend to they have an aspect of the fantastical to them. They have a moral and they're also super bloody. And that I think this is probably like peak Martin McDonagh.
Yes.
I love that it's very play, very much like a play, except it has these gorgeous views of the Irish countryside, and the cliffs and everything. It's beautiful. Colin Farrell is just acting up a storm. He's doing
I
so
low key,
good.
like as you're talking about it, I'm like sitting here like, you know what? I kind of really just wish this had come out 1 year earlier, you
Yeah.
know, because I think it could have like dominated the Oscars last year because it would have kind of canceled out Power of the Dog a little bit.
Yes.
And I think
Ugh, I hated Power of the
it's a
Dog.
stronger film than Power of the
It's
Dog.
much better than Strong. Yeah, Power of the Dog.
But this year, just coming up against something that thankfully was unstoppable. I just kind of wish Banshees had gotten its flowers a little bit more, and I think it could have last year, but that's a
Yes.
different
Yeah.
conversation.
I was hoping that and I knew this was a long shot. I was hoping that Martin McDonagh would maybe get Best Director, even if Everything Everywhere All at Once got Best Picture. That was, right. But obviously the Daniels took it, and that's okay. Ooh, I hope Martin McDonagh has some more fantastic pieces of art in him, because this was such a good film. It was such a good piece of art. Brendan Gleeson was awesome as
Oh, so
well.
good.
Yeah, all of it was incredible. Jenny, the
The little
donkey,
donkey.
so cute, just adorable. And that's
Adorable.
Martin McDonagh does such an incredible job of punching you in the gut and just in these surprising ways. Like, I didn't expect for Jenny to die, and I didn't expect to be as upset as I was that cute little donkey had died.
And
And
also
it
it comes back to like the ridiculousness of what's happening. Like
Yes.
it still is a great tie-in. Like
Yes.
she dies in kind of a ridiculous way, which keeps you on that dark comedy type of way, but it
Mm-hmm.
still is part of the moral of the story of what this man is doing is so outrageous and ridiculous that it led to this like tragic event. And you feel for Colin Farrell's character so much as well, when little Jenny dies.
Colin Farrell is the cutest I've ever seen him in this film. He's just like, it's crazy
Ugh.
because you know who Colin Farrell is as a person, and all the roles he's performed. He seems like the most innocent, sweet little man you've ever seen in your life. And the acting performance here is so incredible because it is not over the top in any way. It's kind of really the opposite of Kate Blanchett, who's like
Yeah.
really tearing up the scenes and really leaning into her character, and she's incredible. And this is not a slight whatsoever.
Oh
But
no.
his performance in this film is so nuanced is the word, and it sounds super pretentious, but it's the slightest little bits behind his eyes and in his expressions where you see so much happening there, so much like
Oh,
hurt and conflict and confusion, and it's just so good and real. And yeah, it was silly and funny, and also just like a fairy tale, a weird,
yeah.
gory, grim, like traditional Grimm's
And it's so good at
scary.
being a dark comedy. Like it's really funny.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire, I was laughing pretty
Mhm.
consistently,
Yep.
but it's also really damn sad. Like the movie is really sad. It's a big downer. So you're like, wow, I just laughed through most of this, but it's actually quite sad. Like at its core, it's really sad, and you end on quite a sad note. And as a lot of people said, I mean, it's a really relatable subject in a way because we've all kind of fallen out with a friend one way or another. And a lot of us have friendships where it just kind of like fades, whether you're on one end of it or the other, of, being the one who distance yourself, or maybe you don't know why. And you're like, oh, why don't I talk to this person anymore? So it's like an oddly relatable type of feeling.
There's a metaphor there
Yes.
about the Northern and Southern Ireland,
Oh,
but that doesn't feel like I
oh
knew there was
no.
some metaphor in there, but what didn't become clear to me until a lot later in the film. And I
Yes.
appreciate that because it made me focus a lot more on the actual characters and the actual
Characters.
dynamics of what was happening between them, not the metaphor. Like Triangle of Sadness was like metaphor. I
Oh,
wasn't connected to any of the characters. It was just a great big
yes.
wonderful piece of silly dark comedy metaphor.
Yes.
But Banshees of Inisherin provides you that metaphor and this fantastical sort of story within a grounded reality, and then slowly sort of brings you into, and then maybe you didn't know this, but inexplicably kind of inexplicable. Ireland, North and South, just started fucking hating each other. Really weird. Lasted a really fucking long time. And
Hi.
then it ended.
Yay, politics.
Yay, politics.
Weird politics.
Weird religious politics bullshit. That's the other weirdness of it. I don't. Oh, it's inexplicable, right? And I wouldn't know as much about it if I hadn't recently watched Belfast, which did a great job of covering the very beginning of it, and Derry Girls, which does a really good job of covering the end of it. Which is crazy because Belfast takes place in like the 60s, and then Derry Girls takes place in like the 90s. So period. Huge. I'm just like this
nuts
island of people that are the same sorts of people. They're all Irish. They have the same history, the same culture. They have all this, but there's this
the same hatred for the English.
Yes, the Protestants and the Catholics, they can't get it together.
Just a mess.
And it's complicated, but it's also like not complicated. It basically just goes back to if people can find a way to get angry and other each other, they absolutely will. But anyways, Banshees of Inisherin, I just loved the story. I loved
it. Made you like think this was a real place, you know? Like
you
had to like look up is it Inisherin? A real no, it's not. Okay, it's made up. Cool.
Yeah, no. I double checked. I was pretty sure because he does like he has the Lieutenant of Inishmore and the Cripple of Inishman. Like it's a whole thing. He's got a couple different plays that are all set in these Inish things.
Yeah. And then we just love, you know, the wonderful way of saying feckin'. Just amazing. You know, now the whole world is just gonna change their way of saying feckin'.
And I also love it's so Irish, right? It just like
so
the actors,
Irish.
like it felt very grounded and in their culture and in their world and in their understanding of what it is to be an Irish person in a way that I don't understand because I'm a weird Irish American.
Well, you know. But unfortunately, the Banshees of Inisherin came home with 0 awards. It was another one of those Best Picture nominees that didn't win a single thing. It's probably
but now Martin McDonagh gets to be Oscar-nominated director.
Yeah. Yes. And again, screenwriter, but he keeps losing that. So one of these days
he's gonna get it. You mark my words. He's definitely gonna get a screenwriting Oscar at some point.
He just keeps losing out to quirky films. I just know every time he sees like a little quirky kind of weird movie getting steam, it just like enrages him. Maybe you need to adapt something. I think that might be the route to go.
He should adapt one of his own plays. Listen, Martin McDonagh, do The Pillow Man. You have a quirky film of your own, and you can adapt your own play, and then you're an adapted scrreplay. Done.
So I know
he probably wouldn't. He's probably one of those artists who's like, no, I want to make new art. I have new stories inside of me.
Yeah, so it's his best, or this movie's best chances of snatching a win on Oscar night were Best Original Screenplay, which we all know it lost, and also Best Supporting Actress. Carrie Condon was actually a big favorite as well amongst predictors coming into the night, going up against the 2 veterans that people were seeing battling it out. So Carrie Condon, she thought maybe she had a shot, but once again, much like Tar and Triangle of Sadness, it lost all of its awards to the same film. And that film happens to be our number 1.
Our favorite!
Our favorite!
Only one! The best movie ever. Not ever. I don't know, maybe. It might be.
Not only our favorite Best Picture nominee, but both of our favorite film of 2020.
Hands down. And almost immediately pretty much immediately I came out, I was like, that's probably one of my favorite films ever, like of all time.
So we have a whole long thing about it because we love it. And we talk a lot about the now Academy Award winning Best Lead Actress, Michelle Yeoh. We did a retrospective.
First Asian woman to win a Best Actress award, which is fucking crazy because she's also only the second to ever even be nominated.
She's also only the second non-white woman to win Lead Actress. Following only Halle Berry is the only other one in the 95-year history of the Oscars. So Halle Berry got to present the award to her.
Oh, good.
She got to welcome her to the 2-person club of non-white women to win. Um, but the film ended up winning 7 awards in total. It's the biggest sweep
It's
since
well,
Slumdog
everything that
Millionaire.
they got nominated for. What did they not win that they got
So they
nominated
didn't
for?
win like best original score. It also
Okay.
didn't win like best costume
Okay.
design,
Okay.
stuff like that. But it
Maybe
did
I
win.
don't know. The costume design was
Well,
pretty.
I mean, it was it was one of them. Best original song get lost.
Oh yes.
So stuff like that. But it ended up winning best picture, best director, best lead actress in a leading role, best actress in a supporting role,
Best
best
original
actor
screenplay.
in a supporting role, and then best
Whoa.
film
Have you seen all
editing.
these pictures of Ki Hai Kwan? Is that what it
Kwan.
is?
Yeah,
Did I
Kihoi
say it right?
Kwan. Yeah.
Ki Hai Kwan and Brendan Fraser with their little Oscars, and then like the picture of them and Encino Man talking to each other. Oh, the preciousness.
And then you see like even this somebody was like, this is how you know Kihoi Kwan is like a good one, because even crotchety ass Harrison Ford
Oh,
lit up like
he was
giving
so
him his
happy.
award. He was so happy giving him that
Larry, I can't
award.
tell you how joyous I would feel if like a little kid that I had worked with got like a major award and I got to like hand it to them. I'd be like,
A little
oh,
kid that you got to work with that like couldn't get a role to save his life for 2
oh,
decades, who got like
yeah.
who was like worried about health care because he was just like he wasn't getting anything for
Yeah.
decades, and then his comeback role gets him an Oscar.
Oh, all right. So
Amazing.
the film obviously is amazing. I'm so glad that Jamie Lee Curtis got an opportunity to show us that she can act, that she's not just a scream queen, that she's not just
And that's
an
quite the
actress from the
controversial one,
90s
Ren.
that's been doing
People,
some
that's the
TV.
one win people are mad about, Ren, is
Really?
supporting actress.
Why? Who do they think should have won?
One, everyone thinks Stephanie Shu was better in this movie than Jamie Lee.
Here's the thing.
Well, one,
Stephanie
because her performance
Shu,
is more of a like actually affects the plot, I think, is part of
yeah,
why people like her role more. That whereas Jamie Lee is kind of just a added seasoning to the world.
sure. Here's the thing though. Stephanie Shu has got decades left to win that Oscar, and I think there's a very good chance she's gonna do it. She kills it. Everything I've seen her in, she's like,
She's amazing.
she is charming as F. She's so good. I just watched her in Poker Face. Have you watched this show, Larry?
No.
Of course not, because you don't watch TV, but it's incredible, and everyone else is watching it.
That's the Natasha Leone one, right?
Yes, uh-huh.
The
So
Ryan
she,
Johnson. Okay.
yeah, and so she was in an episode with Natasha Leone, and she's so good. She plays a drifter con artist chick, and she's great. She plays this she's just got just the right amount of charismatic sass all the time. I think she's got a good future ahead of
Well,
her.
then, I mean, pretty much people had Jamie Lee Curtis as last place on their like who deserves this award list. People
I mean,
loved
it's also
Carrie
not like
Condon. They
surprising.
loved Carrie Condon in The Banshees of Inisherin. And then I know we don't quite agree on this one. I would have given this to Angela Bassett personally for Black Panther, both for the performance, which I think is great, but I think Jamie Lee was a little bit of a lifetime achievement award as well.
Yeah,
And
that's Angela Bassett's would have been a lifetime achievement award
Angela
too.
Bassett's would have been a lifetime, but low key, Angela Bassett has also given us a lot more awards worthy performances than
I
Jamie
agree.
Lee
I
over the
agree.
years. So if
It's
one of
fair.
these should get the lifetime spin, I think it should have been Angela.
But you know what,
But
Larry? I don't think Jamie Lee Curtis is going to turn out another Oscar winning performance. Angela Bassett, absolutely.
this is also fair. I mean, that was part of it with like, everybody was like basically with lead actress. It's a coin flip. Like it's basically just what style did you prefer, Michelle Yeoh or Kate Blanchett? At the end of the day, is Michelle, we don't know. Will Michelle Yeoh ever get a role like this again that will land her back at the Oscars? We know for sure, 100% Kate Blanchett, give it a couple years,
Yeah.
she's coming back.
But yeah,
She'll
but
be
like,
nominated again.
and Michelle Yeoh, like let's talk about like it's the performance. Like she's not just acting her ass off.
Yeah.
She's playing multiple different characters. She's doing martial arts. She's doing all kinds of physical acting.
Yeah.
And this is this is a performance that showcases so much of
Everything.
her talent.
Like pretty much every asset, like Tom Cruise gets so much praise for doing his own stunts, and
Mhm.
people love that, but the dramatics maybe aren't there. Kate Blanchett is obviously a great dramatic actress, though she's been so serious recently. And then Jamie Lee Curtis gives us comedy, but Michelle Yeoh
Anybody ever
encompasses.
remember Kate Blanchett in Bandits? Because that's
Look,
a ridiculous film.
I need Kate Blanchett to do a really fun role soon. Like I
Mhm.
just want to see her kind of fun,
She was
have
fun
fun.
in that Where Did You Go, Bernadette?
She was,
But
just
nobody
everybody
liked
hated
that
that
movie,
movie.
apparently.
Everybody hated it. So,
Shit.
I liked it too.
Good. I'm glad.
Everybody
You know
else
what I mean?
hated it.
Every
So when she has fun, people hate it, I guess. But this was a role. Michelle Yeoh was funny. She was really
yes.
personable. She felt like a real human, like a real
Yes.
mother.
Yes.
She sold the dramatic, she sold the physical. Like it was literally there's what else did you want
It's
from it after?
everything, everywhere, all at once.
Yeah. And then you have Ki Hoi Kwan, who has the story, the comeback story. He's also amazing in this
He's
film. Like
so
he's the heart
good.
of this film. In many ways, if he's not up to par, the film falls apart. Like you know what I mean?
There's again, it's this incredible balance of like you get to see him be this heart, this
Yeah.
sweet, tender, kind character, and he's also like a little
Yeah.
badass and doing all of these martial
Also
arts
doing his own.
things.
He also helps with like the choreography because that's what he's been doing since
Yeah.
he can't get hired to act any longer until now, hopefully. So to see him, this was definitely the year of like the story. They liked the story. Jamie Lee Curtis, she's been an actress so long in genre works. She's known for her genre filmmaking. Comes through with this unexpected performance. She gets the award. Ki Hoi Kwan is kind of pushed out of Hollywood for being an Asian man for decades, comes
Yep.
back, gives his performance, wins. Brendan Fraser gets sexually assaulted by
Complains about it, then gets pushed out of
gets
Hollywood.
complains about it, gets pushed out of Hollywood, finds some sort of revival in his career and gets the most dramatic role he's ever been given, wins the award. Michelle Yeoh, a veteran who also, kind of after Crouching Tiger and that little bit of fame she got for a minute, disappears, has to go back to making, second rate B
She
action
does a lot
movies.
of voice acting for
Does
a
a lot of
while.
voice, gets a resurgence thanks to Crazy Rich Asians. But suddenly the world remembers how amazing she is, and she gets her time in the sun. So it was
Just
just
her.
like,
Wait, first, just a little tiny little thing in Crazy Rich Asians. Okay, like a little tiny thing in
yeah.
Last Christmas. Okay, a little tiny thing in Shang-Chi. Like, Jesus fucking
Oh.
Christ. And then finally,
And getting to hear her just kind of like break down a little bit about, getting this script that really kind of like gave her the opportunity to showcase what she could do on a level that she really hadn't before, not just the stern mom in this instance. And I loved her speech about like women never let people tell you you're past your time. Like,
oh
you're
God,
not.
I love her. She's just so
She's
great.
amazing. And they were all amazing. Like they were all amazing stories. So it's hard to,
Yeah.
even if, I don't think Jamie Lee should have maybe won her award, but getting to hear her speech and loving her as an actress,
Yeah.
who doesn't love Jamie Lee Curtis? I mean,
She's
like at
just
the end of
like
the day, we
she's
all
a
love her.
wholesome person. We haven't heard
We love her.
any bullshit.
She has a trans child who she fiercely sticks up for. She's all about trans rights. She's in the forefront there as well. So,
It's
like,
great.
she's amazing. So, best editing, this team had a 5-person editing team. That is nuts for the work that
For
they
this,
did
oh
for
my
this
God.
movie. So, some people are like, Top Gun Maverick. No, 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 no. Top Gun had a full fledged ensemble team to work
Yeah.
on that
A
film.
whole company.
The work that this little team did to make this film as impeccable as it was is mind blowing. If anyone else
And
won, I would die.
maybe that, I would love to just do, I've had this complaint for a long time that it feels like where have all the editors gone? Like it's like we stopped caring about the quality of the editing, that it's
Yeah.
literally just like no, just take what the director gave you and make sure it all
The
fits
director's
together.
vision has kind of taken precedence over editing or creating a more focused narrative.
Yeah. And I mean, everything everywhere all at once is 2 hours and 20 minutes, but it doesn't feel like it. And it is everything everywhere all at once.
And the
Yeah,
fact
I think with
I
the,
love the Daniels too, getting both the
yes.
screenplay and the direction because, I mean, again, it's their mind who came up with this crazy like shit. Like everything that's in this movie is just absolutely insane, but to make it work, to like
It's
put it
so
together
good.
into cohesive story.
So I think one of the things I've mentioned this a few times that like, we saw Everything Everywhere All at Once the very beginning of the year when it came out.
Yeah.
And you and I were both like, oh man, I really hope they don't forget about this by the time the Oscars come around. It's so good. And they didn't. And I think this is an incredible example of how filmmaking has changed and the awards sort of
Yeah.
functions have changed because of the internet. Because this is the sort of movie that absolutely if this movie came out 20 years ago, there's no fucking way it would have even gotten like a blip in the Oscars.
Yeah.
It would have taken until it came out on home video or streaming or something. And then everybody talked about it long enough that it would be a cult classic. It
Yeah.
absolutely, it was always going to be a beloved film, but because of the nature of us all being contemporarily connected, like immediately we were able to say no, seriously, go see this movie, it's so good, and I'll tell each other to go see it. And so it stayed at top of mind for the whole fucking year, and then took everything at the award ceremony. It's
Yeah.
incredible to think that this actually, I couldn't name another best picture winner that is anywhere close to what Everything Everywhere All at Once is. It's and what it is that it reaches and touches people in the way that a cult classic does, that
Yeah.
like it feels familiar and also novel, and it tickles you in these funny ways and also touches your heart and these other, it has lots of like the Princess Bride sorts of vibes to me, in that like it's inexplicable genre bending kind of moves. Like, what, how do you explain what this is, right? This movie would have had so much trouble in the past because, well, what's the genre? How do we market
Yeah.
this film? It's a sci-fi, fantasy, family drama, comedy. Like, sell
Yeah.
that shit.
It's a
And
genre
yet,
film. When do genre films win the
yeah,
Best Picture award? Ever. They hardly ever even get
ever.
nominated.
Nope. So
It's
it's a
yeah.
beautiful thing. It did make for a very boring night. There's nothing to complain about. I'm sorry this episode's kind of boring because we can't be angry that something
Usually
won
we're
and it shouldn't
very
have.
mad. We're usually get very angry with at least one award win, and
I
there's
was
not.
probably angrier about the nominees, namely that Avatar and Top Gun were on the list. Are you kidding me? If the point of the Oscars, or the one redeeming quality of the Oscars, in my opinion, is that it provides acknowledgement to films that usually have smaller budgets, so that they, A24 would be, I don't know what A24 would be without the Oscars, but it certainly has given them a boost. It's allowed
Oh
them
yeah.
to continue making incredible films every year. But
And since they made The Whale, this is the first time a single studio has swept the acting categories as well as picture and director.
they
Since
are killing it,
I mean,
and maybe we should do an episode on A24, because like Patrick was asking me about it. He's like, why is A24 doing so well? And I think that it comes down to most production companies are making safe bets. They're approaching the movies as a numbers game, and they are saying, we think that we can make money off of this film.
yeah.
So it's, that's why we end up getting lots of these sequels and things like that, because it feels like a safe bet. Whereas A24 is out there and they are giving money to things that they're like, nah, I think this is going to be a sick piece of art. I think they are going to
Yeah.
give this to this filmmaker with this script. This is going to be a great piece of
What a
film. And
gamble. Like, if you look at this movie on paper, what a gamble that they took with this. It's now
I
their highest grossing film ever in the
have
studio's
got to
history.
see what the script actually looks like, because I can't imagine how it's actually written down. It's got to be nuts.
Yeah. It's just as insane, and it's amazing that it won. It has this passionate fan base, obviously, that we're a part of. I even cosplayed as Evelyn at Fan
I
Expo
was
last
just
year.
saying to Patrick today, I need Everything Everywhere All at Once merch.
Right? That's
And
what I thought
the
too.
first thing I thought in my head, I need that trophy that goes on the desk, the weird dildo trophy. I don't know why that's what
Butt
my
plug.
brain said, but I think
You
that's a
know,
piece of merch they could make some money off of.
yeah. Yeah, I know they've sold, lots of random shit at that little A24 store. Nobody actually buys from A24 store though, because they like to that price. That shit is priced a little bit much. A24, I will say that some of that little random stuff you put on your store is too much. It's just such an amazing thing, and so many of us. I know it's not just us two, because again, it's such a personal story about an immigrant woman that finds its way into feeling personal to everyone. Like
Yeah.
everyone kind of is able to find themselves in this
Yeah.
crazy, insane story.
Mhm.
And I think at the end of the day, that's why so many of us loved it so fervently.
Yes.
It brings so much
I
together. So many people got to see their favorite movie of the year win Best Picture. When does that happen?
I
That people's
know it
actual
never
favorite
happened.
movie wins Best
Never
Picture? Never. Like, come on. And I
happened.
think it does showcase that it's slow with each passing year, they bring in new people, but finally I do think that a little bit, at least in some of these branches, because the acting branch, directing branch, I'm still not too sure about you two, but in the overall field, the changing guard of the Oscars votership is starting to find its way through. When we
Yes.
had Parasite, we a few years
And then
back,
when we're like in our 60s and 70s, we're gonna be like, "What are they talking about? It's an
get
incredible piece of film."
get him out of here. But I honestly think, I know some people think this is overhyped, which is naturally always comes with the territory.
Yeah,
When
anytime
everybody
something is
loves
incredibly well
something,
loved.
it's overhyped. It's not that great. But I really think this is one of the most inspired choices the Academy has ever made. Even if it was the safe bet by odds makers at the end,
Mhm.
that doesn't negate the incredible feat it took
Yeah.
to get a film like this to be
To
that.
be the safe bet. Yeah.
Yeah. What?
It's it's also it's so sweet, and it's a feel good movie by the end of the day. And
Yeah.
I think the thing that everybody can identify is that feeling of like hopelessness and needing to find a reason to hope.
Yeah.
And especially here post
Now.
pandemic, right? Like that was probably one of my
Yes.
right. Like, so when 2020, all of the films that came out, right, they had all been made pre-pandemic, but they were all so depressing. And it was like, oh god, guys, I'm stuck in my house. I don't
And
want
I
to
honestly
really
think,
sit here and be depressed about the world. And then
especially last
last
year, I think a
year there
lot
was
of
a few
people,
more, and
Coda, I think that's why Coda ended up
yeah,
overtaking The Power of
I,
the Dog, is that
I
people were just like,
yeah.
it's a feel good movie. I don't
Yes,
know. Like, Power of the Dog was a slog. This was a feel good. I'm
yes.
giving it to
And
Coda.
it's been a long time since the Academy rewarded feel good films. Like
Yeah.
there's been this idea that great film must make you feel things at the depths and darknesses of your soul. And you can make people feel things at the depths and darknesses of their soul, but you can also then, make them feel like it's not the worst thing in the world, that there is some hope on the other side.
Which is like, and that's why I say I think this honestly was the only great choice. Like, as much as I love Banshees and I really enjoy a lot of these other films, this gives you everything. It makes you feel, it makes you think, it
Yeah.
gives you a lot, it puts you in the shoes of other people.
This
it's
is
it's like a
the
full,
only
well-rounded
movie
film.
that on the list that I want to watch again and again and again.
Yeah, again, and it just connects, because if even if you watch, what's the one movie on here that people are doing like I do, Ren doesn't understand, reactions to on YouTube? It's Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's the movie, this weird movie that people are getting hit up in their comments that like, you need to watch this with us. And some people are like, okay, I'll watch Everything Everywhere All at Once. I don't know. And they get tons of views and people love it because I don't know. They just, this movie connects with so many people for
It's
so
also a
many reasons.
movie you want to share with other people. Like I went to go see it a second time because I wanted Patrick to see it, and I told all of my friends. I like made a conscious effort to tell everyone,
Yeah.
if you haven't seen this movie yet, this is hands down the movie you absolutely should go see this year. It's still out in the movie theaters because it's incredible, so go see it.
Yeah. And it was, everybody talks about how Top Gun Maverick, quote unquote, saved theaters, which is already debatable for
Marvel
blockbusters.
saves theater. Stop it.
However, I think what Everything Everywhere All at Once did for movie theaters is probably even more impressive. It's a small film that made a lot of money and had huge staying
Yo,
power.
dude, thank God. Thank God. I need other movies. I need original movies that I I promise there are original stories out there. I know there's this very pessimistic view that every story has been told and it's just different iterations.
Yeah.
This is an original story. It's got lots of themes that are
Yeah.
familiar. This is the most original piece of film that I've seen in ages.
Yeah.
And thank God for A24.
And they
Thank
did it.
God for whoever at A20. I don't know the names,
The
but there's
Daniels
somebody over
making these
weird
weird movies that keep
Somebody's
getting picked
handing
up.
money to artists, and I love it. Thank you. You're an angel.
Yes. So I just think it's the most inspired choice in a while. I mean, I know we just again we got Parasite, which gave us our first ever international film to win
Mhm,
Best Picture, which is amazing. Even
mhm.
before that, we saw little glimmers of hope with like The Shape of Water winning Best Picture. This fish
Yeah,
fucking
yeah,
movie is a little bit
that
weird.
was
It's
weird.
uh, so we've over the past decade, we've seen the cracks open just a little bit of like, okay, there's hope. Like, yes, for every Green Book and Nomadland that we still do get, there are these filmmaker movies that are peeking their way out, these weird choices, these auteur kind of crazy
These
stuff that
experiments.
find their way.
Yeah,
Moonlight got the redemption for Brokeback Mountain, like these
yeah.
these kind of movies that are so relevant have all been over the past decade. So there's hope for the Academy yet until we get old, and then yes, we'll be like, oh, these kids, what are they nominated for Best Picture? Soon enough, that will be us. Like,
I
oh,
like to have a dream where I'm a hip old lady, but I'd be in the minority, right?
there's always a chance that that will continue to be us. Just
I always dream.
statistically, we'll be there too one day. But maybe we'll outnumber the young folks like the boomers do now because people are having less and less children. So the young generation
So we're
won't
gonna
be as
boomer it out.
we're gonna boomer bully the youngins.
We're gonna boomer bully everyone.
To think
You're
like
gonna pay our student loans. I don't give a shit.
you didn't let it though our generation didn't let us forgive them, so y'all still have to pay that shit. Yeah, I mean it's coming,
Yeah.
huh? But and soon enough, not only will this be like overhyped, it's not that great. The young kids will be like, what the heck were they thinking when they gave everything everywhere? I'd like to think it's one
I
of
don't
those
believe
though.
that.
I
I
actually
think it's
think it's
gonna
one of
be
those that again it's so universal,
yeah,
and we're raising up particularly depression has been the thing for some
yeah.
time. This movie is right in line with that, so it's going to resonate with people for a long time.
People
And
are always gonna have depression, and I think depression is going to become. I think depression was hidden a lot because life actually sucked for many many years of human existence, right?
people
You had
just
to
thought that was
work
the
so
norm.
hard just to get by that depression you didn't have you were just obviously we're all sad, like you don't think about it, but now that we have all the food you could really want. We have most of us have shelter. There's definitely issues, but I mean, talk about it realistically. If you were to evaluate us on like a scale of shitty time to
Survival
live
to
to
comfort.
now, it's the best time to be alive. I have literally all the information of the world at my fingertips at any point in
Yeah.
time. I can have a conversation about movies and record it for anybody who wants to see it, and I can see me like there's so
We
many
can talk
things.
to each other from not the same
It's
location
an
from around the
incredible time to
world.
be alive, and yet some people are still so miserable. And that's the way it's always going to be. We're depression is going to exist, and it will continue to be very obvious because we have there's so many ways to be distracted from it,
Yeah.
and yet still people have this
So
just
I think the
feeling of
haters have it
sadness.
wrong. They're like, this is gonna go down as one of the worst Best Picture winners in history, and I think already time has proven that wrong. I feel like the reception to it immediately is already proving that wrong,
No,
and I
it's
think it's really gonna go down as maybe, hopefully, a turning point for the Academy. But you
it's
never know. Last time we
I
had a nice, cool winner, they punished us with like Green Book the next year. So like I wouldn't be
one
surprised if
step
next
forward, two
year
steps back.
we get another Bohemian Rhapsody style bullshit. Like next year, who knows what? They might just slap us
I
in the
mean,
face with Driving
I
Miss Daisy 3.
I doubt it seems unlikely that next year we'll see, well, this year we'll see any films that just have the spark the way that this one did.
Yeah.
Like I think this is it's just magic, right? Like, I've done plays before where it's just magic. It's just the script and the actors and the designers and just the way they all connect with each other. It's just magic. And I think this film was just magic, and you don't get those every year. So there's a
We were
great chance
spoiled.
that
We
next
were
year is going to
spoiled.
be a bullshit win.
I mean, again, what I think this is probably the first time since I have been alive, that my like favorite film of the year wins Best Picture. So
What
I
about
can't expect that.
Moonlight?
Moonlight wasn't quite my favorite film that year. It was
Oh,
up there. It
what
was
was your
top five. It was top five. I'm trying to remember that year. Girl, you're asking me to remember like 10 years back.
I mean, I actually honestly think the year that Moonlight won is always going to be like top number one
Well,
Oscars win for me,
it was just
just because the film I really didn't want to win almost won. They got a
I
out
mean,
of them on
it was
like
the
national
most
television.
dramatic. I mean, that is still the most dramatic Best Picture win, just surely by the error that was made to cause it. But it also allowed for us to be the most elated because so many of us were so disappointed. Even people like me who like Moonlight or like La La Land, was very disappointed because I very much wanted Moonlight to win Best Picture. So I was like, oh, wait,
It was great.
what? That would have been like this year. Then be like Top Gun Maverick, huh? Oh wait, sorry, it's actually
Yeah.
Everything Everywhere All at Once. But
That's all right.
well, really, I would have been pretty disappointed if literally anything was called out. The only one that could have softened it would have been Banshees. I'd been like, I'm not happy, but
Yeah.
fine, I guess.
Yeah.
Anything else, I would have been like, screw you, Academy. I'm pissed.
Yeah. They did a really good job this year.
Did it. So
There's nothing to
next
complain
year
about. Kind of boring.
we'll probably be back to Snarks next year because
Great.
I presume we'll get the backlash of
Can't wait.
that we made everyone happy this year, but also we also pissed everyone off by snubbing the black actresses for some bullshit campaigned. So they still pissed us off in the nominees. It was just actual Oscar night. We were good. We were happy.
By the end, it was like, all
satisfied.
right, well, give
Okay,
everything to everything. It's
And
great.
we still got like a diverse crop here. Like you still awarded a group of people who has been pretty much ignored throughout the history of the Academy. So, yay, we finally got our first ever Asian actress to win the award and the 95th try. So it feels good in that case. Kate, we'll see you again next year.
Yeah, it's fine.
You'll be back, girl. Come on back. It's cool. We'll award you on the next one. But that's it. That is our ranking of the 10 Best Picture nominees, our discussion of the awards. It was a boring but ultimately satisfying time this year. Go watch Everything Everywhere All at Once. Even if you've seen it, go watch it again.
Buy it on Blu-ray.
It just gets like more satisfying upon rewatch, to be honest, because you just are able to
get
pick
your
up on
tissues
everything.
if you're a crier like me.
Tissues, yes, Ren crying over any and everything. I mean, she was bawling.
It's happy tears and
Thor
sad tears.
Thor Love and Thunder, she bawled at least several times throughout the film,
yeah,
just so you know. So yeah,
I'm saying the Fablemans didn't make me cry, and that is a testament.
Yeah. Well, Ren, where can the folks find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Ren Manley, or you can find me on Instagram at RennyPoo13.
Perfect. And you can find me at Chili Boy YT on Twitter and Chili Boy Productions on Instagram and YouTube. Thank y'all so much for listening. Make sure to hit us up with your own personal ranking of the 10 Best Picture nominees so we can tell you how wrong you are. No. But we will hopefully be back sooner rather than later. I think we're at least going to see a movie together not too far off. So maybe we can have a nerdy, fun time with Dungeons and Dragons coming up
nerdy
next.
film.
Yeah,
maybe. Ooh, I don't know.
Make sure to be following us so you see when we sporadically pop up again.
Pine episode. I thought that was a possibility.
You know, I mean, yeah, a review coupled in with Chris Pine. Boom.
Yes.
Perfect.
Retrospective.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you when we return. Bye.